Hello.
Hi.
And welcome to Wheel Takes, a podcast. Wait, why am I doing the intro?
Because it's a show episode.
Do I do the show interest?
You always have, yes.
I do?
Yes.
I don't remember yesterday. Okay, so a podcast about the Wheel of Time. Sometimes about the books, sometimes about the TV shows, and sometimes about other shit too.
Yes.
I'm Allie, and I am a first-time reader on book 11.
Knife of Dreams.
Knife of Dreams.
And I am Gus, and I have finished and read all of The Wheel of Time.
Both of us are also in the entertainment industry.
Yes.
He's an actor, I'm a writer.
Yes.
And so we look at this stuff based on our experiences in entertainment. So sometimes we'll talk about stuff we know about, and sometimes we'll phone a friend if we don't know.
Yes.
Because, you know, it's kind of like practicing law. Like, you don't know about all the law.
No.
You know? So, like, I know about entertainment, but I don't know about every facet of entertainment. So we'll sometimes reach out to people and ask.
We also have both studied or worked on adaptations, so we have some degree of insight into the process of adapting from one medium to another. So a lot of what we focus on in these episodes is sort of the people who are going, why was this way? This is a possibility. We don't know. We weren't there. We didn't work on the show. We're not connected to it.
Before we get started, I wanted to mention something very minor, but I've noticed people, including ourselves, I think, have been calling this like traditional episodic structure. To some people, it is, and art is subjective, and like some people feel like this is the right way to structure TV and film. Some people do this, or TV. Some people do this by accident.
When you say, what are you talking about with this?
The way that we talk about like what each episode does in a story beat.
Yes.
This is how I like to think about it, and
this is one way to analyze it.
And when I was taught this, kind of like blew the doors off of all TV and film in terms of like its accessibility in my brain. But like, not every writer's room or every showrunner does this.
No.
It's just something I like to look at things with. It's an analytic tool, and
Yes.
it's also for some people use this as like a story structures tool, and I think a lot of people do it without even realizing they're doing it.
Sure.
But I'm like, when we say traditional, I don't know if traditional is the word I would use. I would say there are traditional story structure beats that I'm like, we can expand them out into episodic structure, and a lot of people do expand them out into episodic structure, but there are just as many people who would be like, actually, I don't think about it this way. And it's like, that's very cool for you, and that does not mean anything bad about what you create. I just think this is the best way.
Yeah.
Personally.
These episodes are structured I haven't recorded this in a second. These episodes are structured into 3 parts. The first part is no spoilers for anything outside of the show. So if you are I've watched the show and maybe I'll read the book someday, but I just want to know more, that part is safe for you. Then there's a big ol' siren, and the next part is anything that Allie has read is fair game. So today that's everything up to the end of CROSSROADS of TWILIGHT. And then we take another little siren-y break sometimes. And I, usually with a guest, will discuss anything that is full book spoilers. Allie's close to the end of the books, but not totally there yet. So she can't be there for that part, and she leaves. And today, we are going to talk about episode 2 of season 2. So this first part has spoilers for everything up to and including episode 2 of season 2. We're going to try very hard not to talk about episode 3, even though they released at the same time, just to keep this sort of within its own framework. Episode 2 is called Strangers and Friends, and it was written by Catherine McKenna and directed by Thomas Napper, who also directed episode 1.
Is that Napper or Napier?
Napper.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if he was related to Taylor Napier. Napier, sorry.
I don't know how to pronounce it. I haven't spoken to the man, but this is definitely Napper.
I went with Napier. I put a little French spin on it, I suppose.
I don't think he's French. I could be wrong.
I decided he is.
Sure.
He just looks so, like, handsome. I just assume he must be French or something. Okay. So, cool. Gus, we've been kind of circumnavigating around the series plot question, or the season plot question, sorry,
Yes.
of will we be able to master our abilities and get back together?
I will go with that, yes.
Yeah. How do we master the obstacles keeping us apart and come back together?
Because this is the obstacles season. By one way of looking at it, if you have 8 pieces of a story, the second one is oftentimes obstacles.
Yeah. We start off with the inciting incident.
Shit's harder than we thought it was going to be.
Then we got to be like, hey, you know that thing that you want to do? Well, it's actually going to be a little harder than you think it is. And coincidentally, the second season is that, and also the second episode is that. So this is the obstacles episode of the obstacles season. Make sense?
Makes sense to me.
And then the specific plot question, I think, of this episode, like the thing that we're kind of revolving around that's keeping all of the plots connected in some way,
Yeah.
is there's a consistent thread of all of the characters being either locked out or locked in somewhere.
Sure.
Prisons of their own making or due to the choices of others.
Sure.
None of them can progress until they either break out or break in. Will all of the characters be able to leave their respective imprisonment?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So it's like this is the obstacle that they're dealing with within the obstacle season.
Doesn't the plot question of an episode have to be able to be answered within the episode?
It is.
Okay. It is?
In this particular one, whatever is plaguing them in this episode,
Sure.
they are able to resolve within this episode.
Sure, that's true. Okay. Yes.
There
I like
are
it.
potentially other imprisonments down the line. This does
Got
not
it.
preclude. In fact, that can be considered an escalation of the existing thing. So the answer for some of the characters might be no or yeah, but then,
Sure, that makes sense.
right? Because a lot of the time, I mean, Matt Stone and Trey Parker came up with this.
Are this the South Park guys?
Yeah, they are the South Park guys. They came up with this thing where they're like, really good story structure oftentimes is not a series of and thens. It's a but or therefore. So like such and such thing happens, therefore such and
this
such thing
yeah.
happens. Or we want such and such thing to happen, but
This other thing
gets in the way.
Makes sense, yes.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like, you know, sometimes they do break free of whatever is imprisoning them, but here's another thing that's going to imprison them further.
Sure.
Or they break free of this imprisonment, therefore they fall into a trap that gets them into another imprisonment.
Sure.
All that stuff is valid and fair and true. Okay, cool. So, as an example, will Rand be able to get into the garden to get mentorship from Logain? He's locked out.
Even though we don't know at the time it's Logain, he's trying to get in.
We know
there.
he's trying to do. We know from the beginning that there is something about the garden that he is interested in, right? And we know that that's where they keep their celebrity or wealthy residents.
Yes.
So we know that there's somebody there who is worth Rand's time and that he is interested in them, but he is locked out of that because he doesn't have the seniority required to get there.
Right. He is taking care of Errol, the Blade Master, who is
adorable.
My new favorite person.
We also have will Moraine be able to get Lan to the White Tower so that she can keep him safe and pursue Rand. She's forbidden from the White Tower, so she's locked out. Lan, meanwhile, is locked out of his connection with Moraine and her plans.
Mm-hmm.
Will Nynaeve be able to break her block and fear of her power? She's locked in by herself. Egwene, meanwhile, feels left out of the progress and recognition that Nynaeve is getting, which prompts her to make a new friend who she doesn't feel distant from.
Makes sense to me.
Will Perrin be able to figure out the powers that have been thrust upon him and figure out the cycle of violence he finds himself trapped in and consistently forced to confront?
Yeah.
Will Matt be able to break out of the White Tower? His is the most literal.
His is very much literal. Yeah. And I mean, Logain is also literally imprisoned.
Yeah, but there's a lot of that, like either psychologically or physically locked out of something that I think is really interesting.
I'd buy it. I like that. Makes sense to me.
So we're looking at plots. So you recently asked me, you were like, we're getting to a point where there's a lot of plots, right? Do we still have that A plot, B plot, C plot structure? The answer is yes. Right now, we can keep it A plot, B plot, C plot, D plot, and E plot.
Ooh.
That's not out of the question. We do get E plots sometimes, right? Especially in hour longs. Half hours usually pretty much stick to at most a D plot.
That's a lot to juggle in 30 minutes.
It's a lot in 30 minutes.
25 with commercials, 20,
But I would say you usually stick to ABC. But with a 60-minute, you can usually open it up a little more. E-plots are not unheard of. That's a lot of plots to juggle. So beyond that, once we start getting into the real explosions where there's like 2 plots happening per city, we'll get into the A plot will consist of this location. The B plot will consist of everything that happens in this location. And so on and so forth.
And again, this doesn't mean that the Rafe Judkins and the writers sat down with 3 pieces of paper labeled A, B, and C.
Oh, they probably did, though.
They may well have.
To keep track of all the... I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. But, like, I mean, A plot, B plot, C plot.
But it doesn't mean that they definitely did that.
Even more traditional. That's like, screenwriting 101.
Yeah.
And it's just the easiest way to keep track of all of your characters and what they're doing.
It is.
Because it does get confusing after a while. So A plot, Rand in the asylum wanting to get to Logain. A plot's usually your plot, your big plot
stuff,
moment.
What stuff that is happening plot.
Yeah. The why are we here?
And it's usually the plot that has the most screen time, but not always.
B plot is Moraine and Lan going to the White Tower. B plot is usually an emotional plot line, right? There's a lot of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
C plot, this is something that's a little bit more of a runner. Egwene 90.
What's a runner? A thing that pops up every once in a while that we go, oh, right, that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it still has like a beginning, a middle, and an end, because nothing is worse than something that doesn't have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's just given less screen time. And it's maybe a little less plot and thematically relevant, but it's still tied in.
Sure.
It's just like a little bit more of a side quest. That's what I should say. It's a side quest.
It's a side quest. Not to say that it's not also important. It's just not usually the main focus of the episode.
Yeah. D plot, Perrin and the Wolf Powers, same thing, a little bit more of a runner.
Once we get past C, it's all pretty much, and these are things that had to happen.
And these are things that happened in addition that were like side quests.
And we needed to know about it.
Mm-hmm. E plot, Leandrin and Matt and Min. Okay?
Yeah, that makes sense. No, it's really interesting because I feel like even though there are, this could be read as 5 plots, none of them really feels shafted to me.
They've been doing a really good job with balance.
It's very balanced.
Really good job with balance this season. And I think, everything has wrapped up also in a very tight way. And we'll get to that, obviously, when we get to it, because we don't want to spoil anything. So we get this cold open, right? Which is the thing that happens before the Wheel of Time logo comes up. Rand has killed all of his friends.
Yeah, it's not a good time.
And then he wakes up in a start. And he's really, freaked out. And he is spoken to by a mysterious woman in a bed.
Yeah, haven't seen her before.
Never seen her before.
A new girlfriend type partner-y something person, I suppose.
Certainly a good looking lass.
We learn that she owns this inn, right?
Right.
So Rand is paying his rent, apparently, in a consensual and fun way.
It's true. And she says, all these nights together, and it's always the same ending. And I'm like, the sex, the bad dreams, Rand killing his friends? What is she alluding to there?
Sure.
We get an answer for where Rand has been, which plagued us last episode. He's in Kyrian Foregate.
A big city. I think it's also worth noting, really, we kind of got like a cameo of Rand last episode, if that. So I like that the first thing we see is that he's really struggling with these powers. I think that ties in really well to what you are proposing as the season question.
Well, and what those powers could mean.
Yeah, what they could lead to.
Right. He's a beloved member of the community here. We see that he is giving money to a boy on the street. We see that...
Oh, yeah, dude gives him like a free pancake or something.
Tossed a free pancake. I thought it was like a tortilla.
I'm sure it was a flatbread, but I choose to imagine it was a pancake because
either way
makes me more happy to picture somebody just lobbing a pancake at him.
I couldn't help but notice that this episode, people started going, I really like Rand.
Yes.
Yosha's so cute as Rand. I love Rand.
A lot of people really online expressing their fondness for our red-headed farm boy.
Oh, could it be because of the fact that everyone else in this town seems to like him, and we get a save the cat moment.
When he gives the money to the...
Oh, and every screenwriter groaned at me because everyone's like, I'm tired of hearing about save the cat. Well, look what happened. He gives a little boy on the street money, and suddenly
everybody
tweets akimbo. And I know that's not what akimbo means, but I like the word, so I say it anyway. But tweets everywhere about how Rand is such a cutie. He's such a great guy. Oh my God, I love Rand. Oh, couldn't have anything to do with the fact that you were just manipulated by the writers into liking Rand.
Well, I think this...
I'm just kidding.
It is manipulative. It works. I mean, I think this is something that is worth mentioning is, we're all aware of tropes. We're more aware of tropes the more we see them. But the reason they're tropes is because they work.
Yeah.
Until they don't.
But we also like that he did it where no one could see him.
Yeah.
And because no one was around, right? And he did it in not an ostentatious way. He wasn't like, here, child, take this coin. Everyone see that I'm giving the child the coin.
He just gives him the coin.
He just gives him the coin because he's a good person.
Yeah.
We love good people.
Yeah. And, generally speaking, that a trope is a shorthand to get you to understand something.
He also gets called by the
way.
pancake vendor. I'm going to call him the pancake vendor because you want it to be a pancake. My friend. Mm-hmm. So clearly he's been around for a substantial enough period of time that the pancake guy knows his order and also knows him well enough to give it to him. It's looking like free of charge.
Seems to be. Mm-hmm. Probably he did something nice for the pancake vendor on a different day.
It does imply that, doesn't it? And that's all in one line that's barely audible. So then he gets inside the gate and we immediately get a feeling of the rigid dynamic structure of this class, rigid class structure. So because a man pulls a woman away from Rand while he's walking down the street, likely due to his patchwork coat.
Yes, he is not... I think, even more than just that image, you've got the foregate, which is a bunch of ramshackle wooden buildings that do not look particularly stable, sturdy, or enduring. Mm-hmm. And then you look over the wall, the camera pans up, and you see this beautiful stonework and these tall towers that are still being apparently rebuilt or finished or something because they are topless. There's such a stark division at that wall.
Yeah.
And the fact that the guards are so on it to check everybody who, doesn't seem like they fit, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, but walls, of course, are indicative of barriers. Yeah. People trying to keep people out. I mean, those things immediately come to mind. It seems obvious, but they immediately come to mind when we see a wall. We're like, there is a division here. It's very clear and stark. And the fact that a man pulls a woman away from him indicates he's not beloved or comfortable amongst the wealthy like he was outside of this wall, right? He was comfortable and beloved by the regular people, the common people. That aligns with who Rand is as a person, where he comes from. Of course, he wouldn't be comfortable amongst the wealthy. There's also a division in terms of the busyness of the streets, right? We see outside of the wall that there is a lot of activity, a lot of life, a lot of people. People kind of are springing up everywhere. They're in all of the alleyways. They're inescapable, it seems. And then he goes down this one path once he passes the wall, and there's almost no one there. Very different vibe. Rand is in blue and white, blue is typically used as a sympathetic color.
Really?
Yes.
Blue is really?
Look at most of the Disney princesses.
What is, I believe you. What is this for? Is this like a color theory? Where is this from?
Oh, yeah, it's a color psychology thing. Blue is the color of trust.
Wild.
Yeah, we place our trust in people who wear blue, which is why a lot of the Disney princesses typically will wear blue.
Huh. It's interesting then also that Robert Jordan picked blue for Moiraine.
Yeah, it's the protagonist color.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And in Star Wars, good guys' lightsabers are blue.
Blue.
Yeah.
It's color of trust. We love blue.
I have to think more about that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So they immediately not only have him have a, for lack of a better term, save the cat moment. Listen, I like Blake Snyder, and I'm not ashamed to admit that.
He wrote Save the Cat?
Yes.
Sure.
I think just some people get mad about structure because They're like, they don't want to feel beholden to it, but I'm like, it's useful.
I want to interject here also for our non-reader folks. Last season, we did a lot of, now this moment is different from the books. This moment is a little different, and here's why we think that might be. We're going to have to be very careful with how we do that this season, because while an enormous amount of the flow and story and individual scenes that we see so far are very similar, or even in many cases word for word from the book, the way they are presented and the geography of the characters, for lack of a better term, is not. So this discussion, if you are looking for what has changed from the books, at this point in the books, this, early into the books, everyone is still in the city up north where they went to the eye of the world.
I agree with this time jump.
Yes.
I agree with it because it's improv rules. Don't spend time traveling, just get there. We're not interested in seeing someone go, okay, let me get in the car, let me get on the horse. If you're saying, all right, let's go to the bar, cut to the bar. That's just what we need to do.
Yeah. Now, a lot of this is also symptomatic of changes that had to happen because of COVID and changes that happened because the original actor who played Matt left the show. And some of it is course correction from those sorts of things. It presents differently, but in the flow of the story as it is being told, for me, it works quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They, rather than leaving off the end of season 1, the way that book 1 ends off, which is everybody is together and it's kind of triumphant. And, this, you could theoretically end the series here if it doesn't sell well. And it's a satisfying, decently satisfying catharsis to some extent. Instead, we've thrown everybody to the four corners of the world and laid the hooks really deep into our audience to come back and see how are they going to get back together, right? Which is what we discuss as the season question for this season is how are they going to master themselves and come back together?
Right.
So, yes, it's different. It works for me. If you are somebody who really loves the individual events of The Great Hunt, it may not work for you. But if you are interested in hearing why it works for us, we'd love to have you along.
Back to Rand and Blue.
Yeah, sorry. I just thought it was important to mention that.
I had other thoughts. Those are also Moraine's colors, like you kind of pointed out. That unites him to Moraine in our minds, even though they're not together. If someone is matching a color scheme, that's because they want us to think of them as a pair.
Yeah.
He hears the phrase, very whispered, "Do you hear me? You are mine, Rand al'Thor." Who is talking? We can only really guess. Yeah. Does this mean Rand is doing what men who go mad do?
Right, we saw that with Logain.
Yes, we've seen that with Logain. We saw that with the nameless guy at the beginning. So we've seen this a couple times. Is Rand going mad, or is this something normal? And that is the end of the cold open.
It's good lingering conclusion to the cold open there. I quite like it.
Yeah. I mean, you want to end the cold open. Well, sometimes it has nothing to do with the plots. It seems as though the cold open for these typically now are having some... I mean, let me rephrase. Cold opens don't always have to have anything to do with the plot. Historically, we have seen in this show that usually they will introduce a cold open that is something from the past that is informing the present. But lately, it has been oftentimes a lead into what's going on in the show.
Yeah. All right, so, we're 30 minutes in. We've done the cold open. This is about on brand for us.
Right. All right.
So we are going to now step through
the A-plot.
Rand's plot, the A-plot throughout the entire episode, and then circle back to the others.
Mm-hmm. So Rand gets mistaken by his charge, Errol, for an Aielman.
Yes! Oh, this part was fun. I like this guy.
And we get a little background on the Aiel War.
Yes.
Which finished 20 years ago.
We saw a little tiny clip of that. right? In episode 7.
Yes. Around when Rand was born. Obviously, he was born during that war, right?
Yep.
On Dragon Mount.
On the mountain.
But it increases the mystery around Rand. Why is him being an Aiel important still?
Because they
we've
keep
kind of
reminding
just
us,
heard about them. Yeah. If we're mentioning something this many times, usually it's going to be seen.
Unlike a book, minutes are precious, even though we have more time this season, which I'm really, really grateful for. Have you noticed that the episodes are longer?
They are, which, people ask why in the age of streaming, are there limitations to how long episodes can be? Very good question. It's because we're used to them being a certain length and we get bored when they're longer.
Yeah.
Then they just become...
Not always. I know you might not. You, listener, might say, not me. I would watch 17 hours of Wheel of Time. I would too.
Yeah.
That is not universally true.
Unfortunately, we are not the only audience members for this.
And we, those of us who are really, really into the books and the show are not necessarily the people who are going to keep it alive forever.
Yep. Rand has another save the cat moment when we see how nice he is with Errol.
Yes.
And we get the introduction of sword forms.
Yeah. Oh, this was so cute.
Now, in the books, Lan teaches Rand sword forms.
Yeah. In between book 1 and book 2, they're doing a bunch of shirtless sword training.
I don't think that necessarily means that Lan won't teach him sword forms.
Sure.
I also, there are certainly probably more sword forms to be taught. I think it's a little unrealistic that Rand might have one, lesson with Lan and suddenly he knows every sword form.
Yeah, I think it's a month and a half in the books, which is still that's a lot. That's a lot to learn.
But we have to get them together for that to be possible.
Right.
Right now, Rand being where Rand is, having someone who used to fight in the Aiel War teaching him some sword forms so that he can defend himself a little bit better works for me. I think there will be time. Yeah. Oh, I say this. We get the start of him learning how to wield a sword.
Yes.
We also get an idea of what Rand's sword could be because they talk about the heron mark blade.
Yeah. And we I don't think we really got any information about the heron mark blade last season.
No, but Errol refers to himself as a blade master.
Yes.
And Rand talks about bringing his heron mark blade in.
Because Errol talks about if he still had his heron mark blade.
Yes. So we hear the phrase heron mark blade, and we hear that it's important. It also introduces some questions about Tam and how he maybe theoretically got to be a blade master.
Yeah.
Or how that sword came to him.
Very good questions.
And something that we always want to do in stories is introduce more and more questions. We want to answer some of those questions, but for the questions we answer, we want to introduce new and exciting and interesting questions. They get teased by the asshole guy.
That guy sucks.
Yeah, sucks
Holy
a lot.
shit, that guy sucks.
He's like, let me use this guy's PTSD against him and laugh about it. Gross.
Don't walk around triggering people on it. What a dick move.
We get the kick the dog, right? We
that
instantly hate this dude. Because Errol's adorable and Rand is being adorable with him. Again, we're giving Rand all of these likable little moments.
I think I also want to interject here and pull out a line that Rand had that stuck with me really strongly, which was Errol comes into the room, Errol freaks out, and he goes, do we do this? Have we done this before? And the camera kind of lingers on Rand, and he gets this look on his face, and he says, we get to start fresh every day. Mm-hmm. Which is very, I think, to theme for a show that is about a cyclical timeline.
Oh, yeah. That's great. That's a great observation. But here is where we first hear about the gardens outside that are reserved for the asylum's more famous residents, piquing our interest in what's going on outside.
Yes.
Also giving insight into more of the horrific inequities in Kyrian. Many of the poorer people in the asylum don't get to go outside at all.
Yeah, they take their little walks in the corridors.
That's horrible.
And apparently a lot of the orderlies are just dickheads.
Well, considering the palliative nature of nature,
yeah,
right? That's pretty... I question this asylum
It's not
a little
awesome.
bit.
It's not great. It seems like the people in charge are doing their best, but I don't know, man.
Next time we see Rand is at the midpoint.
Oh.
Okay, so this takes us to what is the midpoint of the episode, right? That is what I've determined to be the midpoint of the episode. which is the party at the foregate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. So this is kind of the mini climax in the episode. So Rand watches the guy who was mean to Errol before drink. Nothing makes us dislike a man more than uproarious laughter at a table and then getting inappropriately in the face of the waitress.
Yeah. I think it's less that he's laughing a lot at a table.
No, I know, but there's this weird thing in film and television where it's like if there's a group of men at a table laughing too loudly, we hate them.
That is true. That is a trope, right?
That is just a weird, funny telegraph to the audience of this is the worst man you've ever met.
Lord of the Rings, when they get to Bree and they go to that tavern and they're trying to show the tavern is an unwelcoming place, it's just a lot of shots of large men laughing uproariously from below while drinking.
Yes.
And then Peter Jackson eating a carrot.
Yes, it's and it's usually things like more wine, and then somebody grabs a serving girl in a way that makes you go oh, that's too much.
Now, I appreciated that while this guy was kind of in the serving girl's face,
it wasn't in an assaulty way.
It wasn't in a creepy way. He was just kind of
he just was kind of generally sloppy.
Yeah, and she seemed to be fine with it, which I was grateful for.
Yeah, she wasn't accosted. He was just a little too in her face in a way that she didn't seem upset by, but was sloppy and kind of gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Rafe is being very conscious about the decisions he's making in those regards.
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy is primed for us to hate him.
I think, though, what is important is we're primed to hate him, but we are not primed to want him dead.
Yeah.
Right? Because if he were groping the barmaid, threatening people, then when Rand beats him to within an inch of his life, we're going to be yeah, kill him. As opposed to what I felt when I watched this, which was, buddy.
Too much, buddy.
Buddy, pull back.
Yeah. Rand, you can suck, but not deserve to be beaten to death.
Yeah.
Rand follows him into the darkness, and there's this kind of maze-like quality to this.
Very, very confusing. Oh, by the way, I've seen people discussing how season 2 looks a lot physically darker, and some of the nighttime scenes are harder to see. That is true. I will say, having watched this on a number of different screens, some of that is dependent on hardware, which is not... That is not to say, if you don't have an OLED TV, what are you doing? That's a legitimate thing.
That is what I'm saying.
It's a legitimate thing to say, is that it is kind of hard to see sometimes. But it is easier than some other shows that I can think of. So, yeah, that's fair. I had to turn the brightness up a little bit to figure out what was going on here.
Yeah. But there's this cool maze-like thing that's happening in these alleyways, where it I feel is almost a little purposefully unclear.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Who is where, so that when Rand kind of comes out and gets him,
you're not sure who's jumping who.
Well, this is what I think is interesting. Yeah, you're not quite sure who's jumping who, and it weirdly puts us into the POV of the beaten person.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, also very purposeful. It's using the camera work where suddenly Rand goes away and we think we're following him almost. Right. And then when Rand jumps him, suddenly we're physically on the side of the person being jumped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which also makes Rand's actions even a little scarier.
Right. And we get these low angle shots of Rand punching this guy, pummeling him in the face.
Yeah.
I think, again, giving us the POV of the person being beaten. This is, making him almost a protagonist figure, giving us that feeling of this is too much.
Mm-hmm. And it is. I mean, he nearly kills him.
Yeah, and we get these voices telling him to.
Kill him, yeah.
Rand goes back to his room, and Celine is waiting for him there. Rand tries to tell her, not tonight. He says, I have to be alone, which is a statement that is more about how Rand feels as a whole, given he is a danger to others, than it is about this particular moment.
It does seem like Rand's primary preoccupation is with protecting other people from himself.
Yes.
Which I think makes a lot of sense.
And I think showcases that he has begun to really care for Celine.
Yeah. At the parallel point to this in the books, without giving too much away, for people who may want to read the books and be surprised by the different flow of plot elements, Rand is really actively trying to push his closer friends away from him. Right. In the early half of book 2. He's really going out of his way to be a dick to people who he loves because he doesn't want them to be around him knowing that he can channel.
Right.
Whether or not it is a more or less morally upright decision to fake your own death and run away is up for debate.
Right.
I kind of get it, considering that he thought that they had won.
Yeah. I think it will lead to potentially complicated feelings that we might explore. I mean, I'm assuming, and I will, I think, continue to operate under the assumption that the friends won't reunite until episodes 7 or 8.
Probably, yeah. And I think it's also fair to mention, because we know that this is an adaptation both of book 2 and book 3, is what they've said. Rand on his own, without being, don't worry, I'm not giving too much away. Rand on his own is a big part of book 3.
Yeah. Rand is becoming horrified at the monster he's becoming.
Hey.
Even if we know he doesn't have the heart of a monster given his actions in this episode. And Celine, rather than respecting his wishes, gives a monologue about how people want to be alone when things go badly, but that's when they need each other the most and they can be alone together. While doing so, she kisses his injured knuckles that he was just using to punch a guy's lights out. So she seems a little aware of the fact that he might have been doing something not great.
Yes, but she doesn't seem, either she trusts him enough or she doesn't care.
Right. Is she another flawed mentors like the ones we've seen for 2 seasons? Rand pushes her up against a wall by the throat.
Very loaded imagery.
And they make out. She's bringing out a very different side of him that she seems to like. The relationship feels a little toxic.
A little bit. You know, I would agree with that. I think the way that that Celine is presented, again, this character exists in the books and is presented in a different way in the show from how she is in the books, and I think a lot of that is symptomatic of the books, especially the early books, having a lot of sort of purity culture elements to them as surrounds the Two Rivers folks. We've discussed in the previous season how Rand and Egwene have sex in episode 1 would not happen in the book. So this particular type of relationship that Rand has with the innkeeper Celine is different and more mature in some ways than the what goes on between these two characters in the book. Is that a fair thing to say, Allie?
Yeah, that's a fair thing to say. Then we get this classic romance scene. The couple lying in bed, post-coital, sharing their past heartbreaks and seeing if they can move on together. And he says, I don't want to hurt you. You can't. So in a classic kind of romance, right, we have the meet cute, which we've kind of missed.
Yes. We came in midstream here.
We came in midstream. But we want to see that the two of them are on equal footing. Romance is a uniquely female POV genre historically.
Usually, yeah.
You know, I saw someone on TikTok joke that we had to make up a whole genre of where men are nice to women. But there's the meet cute. We have to have the banter that shows us that they're on equal footing of some kind, right? This, and for them, I think in part, we get a little bit of that banter at the very beginning, where she jokes about him working for his rent.
Yeah, that was funny.
And then we get a little bit more here where while she's kissing his knuckles, it seems like she understands him more than even his friends do. She has an understanding of like where he's at emotionally.
It does seem as though, I mean,
in almost a mind-ready way.
Yeah, and we're discussing how this relationship has a lot of very toxic elements, and it does. That doesn't mean that she cannot also be more cognizant of his mental state. In fact, it probably means she's more cognizant of it.
Yeah, it just seems like she's cognizant of it, but in an exploitive way.
Yeah,
that can be true. And then we get the dance, which is a moment that the couple has that is physical, right? It can be sex. It can be a pottery class. In this case, it's sex. That showcases how they fit together physically. And of course, we also get the kiss, which has an element of danger.
the neck slammed her up against the wall kiss.
Yeah. So
A bit
typically there's a element of danger in the kiss, right? But because we've missed the meet cute, it feels like we don't see this relationship. The meet cute is all about making it so that we're like, this is a relationship that is ordained by the gods, right? It can't just be a hookup in a typical romance where we're like, this is a couple that we're rooting for. We have to see them meet so that we understand why they are destined to be together by the gods. So I think that by not showing, we're kind of corrupting these typical romance beats to showcase that maybe this isn't the person for Rand permanently.
Perhaps not.
Regardless of what happens. So maybe she dies. Maybe she is bad. Maybe she, like Dana, maybe she is, maybe they have an amicable breakup. But something about this relationship we're being telegraphed is not the one. I mean, and the fact that Egwena's alive when she's not in Rand's dreams also indicates maybe that might not be the lasting relationship because we haven't really put an end to Egwene yet.
No. I think it's also important for us to mention when we say that there are elements of this that are toxic and there are elements of this that are not long reaching, it's not because it's primarily sexual. That's not the problem. There is nothing wrong with a sex first, no strings attached hookup sort of relationship. It's more that it doesn't really seem like Selene is necessarily meeting Rand where he is. Right? She is meeting him where he is, right? Like, because she is going to him and being like, you don't really actually want to be alone, though. Sure.
But she's violating his consent because he did say, I need you to leave. And she ignored that.
Sure.
And he says it to her more than once.
Sure.
And so that gets to a point where that raised some alarm bells for me.
There are toxic elements to it. I just want to make sure, we're not saying everything about this is bad.
And we know, based on earlier this episode, that Rand is not an inherently violent person.
No.
And she seems to be bringing out a side of him in this moment.
And kind of reveling in it. That's the issue.
That is not great. And not only that, but when they are in bed together and they're talking about their lost loves, he confesses that he is still having issues not thinking about Egwene.
Yes. And she talks about her
somebody in her life,
ex, right? Somebody that she was with, and what she's what they conclude on is, you'll help me remember and I'll help you forget, right?
Yes. We're not saying that two people who aren't in love with each other can't have sex. What I am, and have that be totally fine. What I am saying is that the relationship doesn't seem to be built on any respect for consent or respect for who Rand is as a person, which is not someone who wants to slam someone against the wall by their throat.
Doesn't seem
without
like his
checking
bag.
To make sure that would be okay with her.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't seem to be coming from a place of arousal on that is based on mutual consent. That seems to be coming from a place of rage.
Seemed to be, yeah.
Which is scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't non-consensually throw someone against the wall by their throat.
That is bad.
That's the thing that that is sending alarm bells for me personally.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that.
But this interaction with this guy in the alleyway that he beat to a bloody pulp has given him access, right, to the courtyard.
Yes.
And so in another episode, or in another scene, we see the resolution and hook of the episode. So we see how this plot line had the midpoint and resolution and hook of the episodes. Rand gets access to Logain, and the hook is him saying, I have a feeling we'll have a lot more in common.
That was so fucking good. That's another thing to remember is the A-plot often is the first and last thing you see.
Yes, and in this case it was.
Yes. So is that all we have for the A-plot?
That is all we have for the A-plot.
Okay, let's take...
really notably, the A-plot has control of a lot of the major beats of the episode.
Oh, the opening, the midpoint, the conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even though it's not every beat of the episode, right, because it can't be, it is a lot of the major beats of the episode.
Yeah. Let's take a little ad break, huh? right, Allie. B-plot?
B-plot. So first, we see Moraine and Lan on opposite sides of the room. Now, Gus, you know, as someone who has directed theater before, that a distance between two people
Is noticeable.
And
meaningful.
Meaningful and a powerful position to put two people in.
Very much.
Right?
Yes.
It's much more powerful than putting them close to each other.
Far away from one another. That is a very different relationship. And this sounds silly when I say this. If you're sitting across the room, it's different from sitting next to each other. But like, that's true. And that's something you have to think about. Especially when you have two people who are bonded so closely that they bathe with, not literally with, but no, yeah, literally with one another.
With each other.
If they're convalescing from wounds and they are not
right by each other's side,
something's going on here.
Yeah, something is wrong. Adelius kneels before Lan, purposely getting into a slightly sexual position.
God, she's so fucking funny.
And offers to heal him. Hilariously reminding us of what has already happened and what might be causing the awkwardness between Moraine and Lan. Varen reveals that Adelius and she will accompany Moraine, but Moraine says that she was exiled from the tower, reminding us what her thing is that she's been locked out of, what she can't access.
And we learn that these two are sisters.
Yes, we do.
Both of who can channel, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. But Moraine says that she was exiled from the tower, which Varen knows. Notably, Varen already knows this. Moraine tries to stand, and Lan goes to her to help her, but she refuses. Lan's help up until recently has been very important to the two of them.
Yes.
It's been a big part of their dynamic.
Yes.
Moraine leads, but Lan helps. And in this particular instance, Moraine is done with that dynamic.
When if we think back to episode 1, season 1, when they're fighting with one another, it's like a dance. And now it didn't, right?
Well, and it certainly wasn't last episode either.
No.
Their mojo is gone.
Yes.
Even though he saved her last night, this hasn't fixed what's broken between them. He's weaker than ever, and the fight with the Fates the night before showcases how hamstrung he is by the loss of the bond. Moraine, by extension, can't afford to bring him along because the risk to Lan is too great. And that was evidenced by even further by last night. Even though he saved her life, he nearly died in the process.
Yes. Well, and he would have died if Adelius, as she says, you failed me. If Adelius and Varen hadn't showed up, I'd be dead.
Mm-hmm.
That is a factually true statement.
Yeah.
Disregarding the fact that she also couldn't help.
No, but she is a sacrifice she is willing to make. Lan is not a sacrifice she's willing to make.
Because, like, look, to get ahead of myself, I don't buy this idea that she is genuinely pissed at him and genuinely thinks she's better than him. I think that the only possible way that line, you know, we were never equals pays off is that later on she's going to say you were always better.
Oh,
I don't see any other way.
I was honestly a little surprised by how harsh people were being toward Moraine and her treatment of Lan online, because to me, I was just thinking about it, I suppose, from the perspective of if it were me and you.
Yeah.
And I felt that I had this big mission that I was going on that I thought could get you killed, I could see a world in which I would want to distance myself from you just to keep you safe.
Yeah.
Is it the nicest thing in the world that she could do to him?
No.
No. Is it potentially nicer than him being killed?
Probably.
In her mind, probably. And this gets at Moraine having to treat Lan horribly to get him away from her, doing cruel things in the name of good. But again, what is good here? Who are the good guys? Ashamael asked that question from the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also important to note that when we're talking about book to page things, the way Moraine is behaving is similar, not the same, to what she does in the books, but it is almost exactly what Rand is doing to his friends at the beginning of book 2.
And yeah,
he's being extraordinarily deliberately rude and saying the most hurtful things he can think of in some cases to try to get his friends to get away from him.
I can also think of some other men in the books who behave this way at various points.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I feel like this is her trying to protect him. It's not always nice, but doing cruel things in the name of good. Moraine is back in blue, also notably. Now that she has a mission and a direction, she's regained her sense of purpose, and it's also pairing her visually with Rand.
Yes, the blue.
We're connecting the plots without them being physically connected. Damn, there's a lot of plots. Sorry, I'm just scrolling. Varen reveals to Moiraine that her deductive reasoning skills have led her to determine Moiraine is dealing with the dragon.
Yes. Oh, I liked this.
Varen is presented pretty quickly as an astute gal.
She's smart cookie, seems like.
Yeah.
Well, she's Brown Aja, right?
She's Brown Aja.
So she's a librarian, essentially.
Yeah,
she's a researcher.
The knowledge Aja.
Yeah.
The book people. The viewers now get to see how smart Varen is, and this moment is pretty straight out of the books, actually.
It is. It's in a different place, and it's with different... not everybody who is present in the books is present in this scene here.
Well, I think Swan was present, right?
Swan is present in the book.
In the books.
But this moment is straight out of this roughly the same point of book 2 as this point is in season 2. Where Varen essentially, apropos of nothing, in the middle of a different conversation is like, oh, so I assume you found the Dragon Reborn. And in the books, as in the show, the Aes Sedai who are with her, who are already aware of this, are like, do we need to kill her?
Right. Moiraine reaches for a knife, which is also a similar beat to the books. But we again get to see how smart Varen is and how astute she is, because Varen doesn't balk.
No.
And ends up commanding Moiraine to stop advancing. She goes, and that is close enough.
Yep. And she commends her on her willingness to do what must be done.
Yeah, she approves of Moiraine grabbing the knife because it shows how far she's willing to go for the dragon, killing an old woman. Again, are we the good guys here? Is this good person behavior? Possibly. We're justifying it to ourselves. Varen says that they need to make their broken world whole again, but she refuses to say whether she wouldn't betray Moiraine or Rand because neither of them knows what the future will hold. Could be a smart thing to do. Could be Aes Sedai doublespeak.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to take gambles and trust people eventually.
It's a really clever line. Woods Varen says something about, I'm not going to make a promise. One, because of that, and two, like, you and I both know how Aes Sedai work. I could find a loophole.
Yes, she also says that.
What oath can you not find a loophole in?
Yeah. She's like, I suppose we're just going to have to trust each other.
Yeah.
Which is true. Moiraine is hamstrung right now. Lan can't function as well without her. They do need Varen. So they have to open up the circle at some point and allow other people in.
Yep.
Which also brings us to this like recurring thing that I think is happening this season too of like, who are we going to tell about the Dragon Reborn? Will we reveal that the Dragon Reborn is there? And how will that make him vulnerable? She also mentions that oaths have loopholes. Yep, reminding us of Moraine's moment with the White Cloaks last season. We had that scene so that we could have this one.
Yep.
Yep, we got to see how Moiraine was able to manipulate people to also show that even if Varen is manipulative, does that mean that she's a bad person?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Again, who can we trust? Who is bad? Who is good? It's really kind of up to our interpretations. Varen mentions there are prophecies in books at the tower that could be helpful.
Yeah.
Tome and Head, Battles in the Sky, a branded hand that wields it.
A sword of flame.
A sword of flame. Yes, thank you.
A sword of flame and the branded hand.
And the branded hand that wields it.
All of these are prophecies from the books.
Varen is now tasked with finding these prophecies since Moiraine can't. She is locked out. So this is a potential solution, but Moiraine has to trust people. But expanding the circle makes things vulnerable.
Looking back at the A plot, is Celene's being locked out of Rand? Could we read that way?
I think possibly, but I think that she doesn't seem to think that that's a problem.
Sure.
Well, I think that she seems confident that she seems pretty confident in their relationship.
That's true.
Like, even when he's like, leave, she doesn't leave.
Yeah.
Now, do I think that that's necessarily a good thing? I don't know. Because you can read it one of two ways, right? Again, who is good? Who is bad? It could be read as a violation of his consent. It could read her giving him the talking to that he needs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that simple. Though I did notably watch with a friend who said, I'm excited for my sons to watch this so that I can talk to them about red flags.
Yeah.
She did say that.
I remember that.
Okay, so then we get to Moiraine and Lan sitting around the campfire with Adelius Varen and Tomas. So Adelius prompts Moraine and Lan to talk about how they met.
Yeah.
Oh, first she teases Tomas and Varen about the fact that Tomas used to be really hot back in the day, and then he chose to be Varen's warder, and now he's totally sexless.
That was kind of funny.
Or like that he gave up his sex life. So, apparently not all Aes Sedai and their warders are sexual. It seems to be implied that the bond between Tomas and Varen is purely platonic.
And, well, Moraine and Lan appears to be purely platonic.
Is purely platonic.
Yeah, it is, yeah. But it seems like it's tied to the Greens.
It seems that Adelius would not be platonic with a warder.
Probably not.
It kind of begs the question why she doesn't have one.
Well, they're way out there in the hills.
Who knows? But we like her, even though she's a little invasive of Lan and Moraine's privacy, because
she's
obviously...
funny.
Yes, because she's funny. And it gets a little awkward between Lan and Moraine for a second as she asks for the story. And Varen gets a little worried and tries to change the subject, but Adelius insists that they talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
We get the story essentially straight out of the books.
Yes, this is the prequel this is in.
Mm-hmm. And it allows them to reflect on the connection they've lost and why they came together in the first place. An emotional beat that's necessary to reveal that while Moraine is being mean to Lan, it's out of love rather than malice.
And I think it also, for Lan, it serves to hammer home that a good warder can protect you from dangers. A great warder can protect you from yourself.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is...
Well, that's what Moraine is trying to do also. She's trying to protect Lan from himself,
and
from
vice
his
versa, yeah.
need to fulfill his obligation to her.
And he is trying to protect her from whatever is going on internally, this is a much harder monster to kill sometimes than a horned one.
Yeah.
The inner struggles and crisis of faith, you can't stab a crisis of faith.
It's true.
No matter how hard you want to fix it, sometimes you can't just fix it.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to let them deal with their struggles and just be a supportive friend, partner. But, she also won't let him in. So he doesn't really get to know what's going on with her. But she doesn't feel like she can let him in because it could hurt him in the process.
Right.
We also hear a word that is significant in Malkir, carniera.
Oh, yeah.
In which an older woman takes a younger man's virginity.
Now, we don't need to talk about the book parallel to this at all. There is one.
Well, we can also talk about what it's also maybe potentially tying us back again to Rand and Selene.
That's a great point.
Not the virginity part, because obviously we've seen Rand and Egwene get
older
hot and
woman
heavy,
thing, yeah,
but the
true.
older woman, younger man thing, which there's nothing wrong with.
No, certainly not. That's
it does
that's not the problem.
continue to draw parallels to other plot lines.
Yes.
And can't help but notice that Lance Carniera was trying to kill him.
Something like that, yeah.
So it raises some alarm bells about what could be the implications of this. But maybe it's all just false flags of getting us to be suspicious of Selene when she's perfectly fine. Again, who do we trust, right? We're hammering home. Who do we trust? Why? What makes them a good person?
Yeah.
What makes anyone a good person? Am I a good person? Are you a good person? Is Petey the dog a good person?
Yes.
Petey the dog is exceptional.
Very good person.
But otherwise, who knows? Being a human, being a sentient monkey, which is what we all are.
Yes.
Right? Is a complex thing.
Yes. And that's really the last time we see them before.
Wait.
Sorry.
But the woman who had taken Lan's virginity sent someone to kill him, which, Lan assumes that, which raises more questions about Lan's background.
Yeah.
Moraine teases Lan about trying to kill an Aes Sedai. Lan responds that he didn't know that she was an Aes Sedai.
He thought they were all old.
He heard they were old, cold, and sour.
God, that's fucking funny.
Which is funny considering the age of some of the women present.
Yes. He chucks her into a pond. And I'm just going to give you one thing from New Spring. Later on, she drops that pond on his head.
Yes.
The prequel book is so funny, but don't read it before you've read, like, the first 5 Wheel of Time books, in my opinion.
And we bring up their funny backstory because they're funny. And while we've been driving wedges between them, right? And some people feel that Moraine was being too mean to Lan, which, I think she was thinking she was doing the right thing. We bring up that funny backstory to remind us why we loved them in the first place.
Yeah. And for them to remember the good times.
Yeah.
And for Moiraine, I guess, to decide that they will never come again.
So since it's clear that the first thing wasn't true, that she was old, it also implies, and Daniel Henney acts it brilliantly this way, that he doesn't believe Moiraine is cold and sour either.
No.
Even though she's treating him badly. There's hope for this relationship. This story shows the soft, vulnerable, and silly sides of Moiraine and Lan. And then Adelia says, any old warder can protect you from a Trolloc, but a good warder can protect you from yourself.
Great line.
That's what Lan is trying to do, and that's what Moiraine is trying to do for Lan, but they won't let each other. Conflict. Conflict in story is the most important thing.
Yeah. That's the driver.
So we get to the all is lost of the episode. Moiraine explains to Lan her real reason for picking Lan, because he wasn't fazed by Trollocs, and she couldn't imagine the courage it took to face the shadow with nothing but a sword. Just as she is doing now is the context of that, and as she was willing to do before with her dagger against Varen, who we just saw take out a bunch of fades last episode.
I think it's also a nice tie back to Leandrin's thing in episode 1 about how I could make a sword, whatever. I'm not going to though. That's wimp shit.
Oh, by the way, Varen mentioned a flaming sword this episode, right? With a branded hand that wields it.
She did, yes.
Tomas had a flaming sword last episode.
Yeah, he did have a sword that was on fire.
Yeah, I think that's important. And Moiraine tells Lan, that's when I knew that when the time came, you could survive on your own. There's a reason Moiraine left Rand behind when going to the Eye of the World, and there's a reason why she's rejecting him now. She doesn't want to get him killed and assumes he can live without her, unlike the other warders she's seen. She's cruelly sending him back to the tower out of love for him. She also reveals she was wrong about everything. She's beating herself up for her mistakes and for the powerlessness she now feels, especially knowing that her mistakes led to her and Rand getting Ishamael out of his prison and potentially the other Forsaken as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which I said what was what was happening, by the way.
Yes.
I was like, I knew they let him out. Anyway, so I was just excited about that. Moiraine says Lan has never seen the forest for the trees because I've never shown it to you. Both in an effort to get him to leave her and revealing in part that her plans never included him dying with her.
Yeah. And again, touching back on what this parallels in the book, there is one conversation that Lan and Moiraine have in the book where she essentially says, hey, in the event that I die, you're going to go hang out with this other person. And Lan is very upset about this.
Yeah.
But it is in the book, it is presented as here is something that might happen someday, as opposed to what her losing her abilities has forced it to move up. An immediate, you're out of here now because I can't protect you.
Lan points out that it's impossible for Ishamael to cut Moiraine off from the power. And in my opinion, he's right because she's shielded.
You think?
Yeah. And I think that it's possible that she's not seeing the forest for the trees in this situation because it's her and she's beating herself up about her failures and she's not being interrogative about her situation.
Sure.
But she points out he has no idea how powerful they are. Or as she says in the episode and in the commercial,
you have no conception of the power they wield.
In this instance, I think it's Moiraine, mired in her feelings, who cannot see the forest for the trees in this regard. Oh, I said that twice, but anyway.
It bears repeating.
I'm assuming Moiraine gets her powers back in episode 7.
That's your guess?
Is what I say.
All
yes.
Right.
Moiraine reminds us again of the power of assumption that when she reveals that Lan merely assumed Rand was dead, which is right before she says she and Lan were never equals.
The
power of assumption.
Yeah, that's clever. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, we assume that she's being mean and being truthful.
Never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
That never crossed in the same way that, frankly, the quote unquote love triangle in the last season ever seemed genuine to me. That's the same. It's manipulation. All of it is manipulation.
Yeah. We can't trust what these characters say.
Which I really like.
Yeah.
You know?
Either because they are manipulating things or because they are misunderstanding something, which again is why I'm like, Moiraine talks about the power of assumption while she is making an assumption, which is that one Forsaken could cut her off from the power completely. Now, we can assume she meant that since Aes Sedai cannot lie, but Varen said also in an earlier scene that there are loopholes to that, right? She is reminded us of that the last time we saw them. Or no, the time before, but still this episode, that there are loopholes to lying. And clearly that is true in that one scene with Mat and Leandrin.
Yep.
Which we'll talk about later. So I assume that at some climactic point, Moiraine will reveal to Lan that we aren't equals because you're better than I am. Yeah, that's just what's going to happen. Alana comes to take Lan back to the tower, which is a task more important than saving Nynaeve, which she talks about. Alana goes, oh, there's something more important that Moiraine needs us to do than taking care of Nynaeve. And we'll talk about the Nynaeve plotline in a minute. Because this is saving Lan. Moiraine really violates the relationship between herself and Lan.
Really does.
Because she threatens to pass Lan's bond to Alana by force. So this deep, deep relationship she's going to pass without consent. There are consent issues this book, but not with the waitress and that random guy.
Yes.
Which, you know what? I appreciate that we're looking at consent issues in nuanced ways.
They're deeper consent issues. They're not, you know.
Well, because consent violations don't always, because I think we make this mistake as a culture of going, it's just weird, gross, gropey guys at bars. And like, we can look for those and go, that is a bad guy. And we can imagine in our mind how we'd act in that situation and go up to them and go, you're being a bad guy and I'm going to punch you in the face for being a bad guy. But consent issues can also be much, much subtler.
Yes.
And that's why when people will often go like, well, that can't be a consent issue because in that case, I violated someone's consent. Well, possibly. You may want to look into that rather than getting defensive about it. You may want to go like, maybe I should reflect and grow from this instead. She's going to have to put in some work to repair this relationship after this arc, perhaps by telling Lan that he's better than she is.
Well, we'll have to
waffo.
That's pretty much it for those two, right?
That is it for those two.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break for a couple of ads. Welcome back to the C plot. Man, it's wild that this is the C plot because there's so much that happens. This is very well balanced.
A jam-packed, well-balanced, super tight episode.
Yeah. I gotta say, I loved season 1. I feel this is a really stronger season in my opinion.
I mean, here's the thing. I thought season 1 was great in a lot of ways. I think they got hamstrung by COVID, as did a lot of things. And that was particularly brutal for a fantasy show. So they had a lot going against them. I think they stuck the landing. Did it wobble a little bit at parts? Yeah, but also COVID. Let's give them a little grace. Once in a lifetime pandemic. I'm thrilled to see what they have done with a season that was not impacted by that.
Yeah.
Thrilled and a little smug. Anyway, just kidding. Egwene walks into the tower kitchens and asks after Nynaeve, but she's been taken by Leandrin. That's going to annoy Egwene inevitably, right? That's going to be something that's going to bother her. Oh, here, we're juxtaposing Egwene working hard physically in that moment, right? Scrubbing pots, and having her friend who doesn't work hard by scrubbing pots and who, you know, is blatantly rude to Alana Sedai, get the afternoon off.
Mm-hmm.
Egwene is in her gray apron, but Nynaeve is in full white, unmarred by work.
That's a good point.
Yep. Leandrin takes her to the healer's quarters, demonstrate on a field trip of all things. We're just continuing to stick the knife a little further into Egwene.
It's the dirty rush.
Mm-hmm.
It's Nynaeve is special. Nynaeve is special. Nynaeve is special. You're not.
Demonstrating her understanding of Nynaeve and Nynaeve's priorities, and leading us to believe that perhaps she's not as malevolent as we fear. We're seeing these women who maybe understand our characters better than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Who can we trust? Who is bad? Who is good? We don't know. She shows Nynaeve the benefits of what they can do, the healers. And we introduce the concept of Crimson Thorn.
Yeah.
Which will come up later in the episode. Chekhov's herb, if you will.
Chekhov's herb.
Leandrin is showing Nynaeve a girl who has an illness that Nynaeve mentions Egwene having back in season 1 that she fought through to survive. So that's going to connect bone break fever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, or break bone fever.
I get it
the
wrong
words
every
mixed
fucking
up.
time.
Here, the child doesn't have to fight through the illness like Egwene had to do. Nynaeve can appreciate that more than anybody. Nynaeve also has the ability to cure it if she studies to do so, making the power a boon rather than something to fear, like she does right now.
Mm-hmm.
She says to the woman that is there, the accepted that is there, that was incredible. And the accepted responds, it took a lot of practice. Perhaps there's a benefit to working hard and breaking through Nynaeve's block. Perhaps magic isn't something to fear. We also get our first look at accepted.
Yeah, with the rainbow hem.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
I love their take on the outfit because it has all these little
rainbow teardrops.
Rainbow tears. It showcases that they have yet to align themselves with any particular Aja, but the possibilities are there. Something they might be reaching toward or working toward. Like Nynaeve has to be working toward what this accepted can do.
Yeah.
But just as maybe we are starting to let our guard down around Leandrin, and not to mention, Leandrin and Nynaeve in this scene are wearing pretty matching belts.
Leandrin's definitely going in on trying to be...
And they have pretty matching braids.
And this ties back to episode 5, I think, is when she first started to... It's Nynaeve, right? Nynaeve.
Yes. Yeah, Leandrin's been dirty rushing her since season
day
1. Yeah, but Leandrin has gone so far, and the costume department is doing this on purpose, to mimic what Nynaeve is wearing.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, so that she can be visually on Nynaeve's side, potentially tricking us, or not tricking us, into putting them together as a duo.
Mm-hmm.
But then we see her pocket the Crimson Thorn, something we know to be deadly, so maybe we can't trust her, even though they're wearing matching braids and matching belts.
Yeah.
And she took her on this fun little field trip that would pique Nynaeve's interests. Who can we trust? Who is good? Who is bad?
She also talks extensively about how the Red Aja ostensibly prevents disease by destroying men who can channel, which, is going to have the wrong effect on Nynaeve because Rand.
Yeah, and also sounds a little eugenicsy.
Kind of. I mean, I understand needing to prevent men who can channel from going nuts and blowing everything up. That's a valid perspective, valid point.
Also, can we again clock how often Leandrin mentions little girls and
She's
people
really
doing
big
bad
about
things
that.
to little girls?
She's really big on that.
That's her whole fucking thing. So I keep going, we've heard this from you more than once, which means they want us to pay attention to it. What happened to you as a kid, girly?
Yep.
All the mentors we're meeting at this point have a lot of question marks around them. The mentor-mentee relationship is something we treasure and search for. So this is a violation of that bond.
Mm-hmm.
There is no safe harbor. Perhaps that's why Rand has to seek out the tutelage of madmen. Leandrin gives her point of view, dirty rushing Nynaeve, by pointing out that essentially, like we said, as magic cops, they can stop injury and death before it ever even becomes a problem, making them even more life-saving than the magic doctors. I don't know about that. I guess.
Matter of opinion.
Nynaeve retaliates to Leandrin that men who can channel aren't a disease, showcasing her care for Rand. We talked about that. Leandrin also relates to Nynaeve by saying that she also grew up in a small village and says, I can make it so countless numbers of girls never have to be saved in the first place. We're getting an important point of view here about why anyone would pick Red, and that maybe the Reds, while harsh and while looked down upon by a lot of people, are doing something good. Very, very reminiscent again of Ishamael's speech to the little girl.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps things are simply misunderstood. She suggests to Nynaeve that when the opportunity to become presented is presented.
To become accepted is presented.
Jesus. To become accepted is presented. And we first hear of to take it. And we first hear of the arches.
Yes, featured quite prominently at the end of this episode.
Leandrin, I already said that. Leandrin then goes straight from there. She notably buys pastries during this scene.
Yeah, directly to Matt. Now,
to
is
Matt.
this...
So again, can we trust her?
So this is still kind of B plot. C plot.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Matt's involved.
Yes, because we're going to have to start, and we will continue to have to do this. We're going to have to start separating the plot lines into location.
Yeah.
That is because there are a lot of elements that we're juggling, and those plots are informing each other by being in the same location.
Yeah.
And often the characters overlap.
Yeah.
So just to keep everything not confusing, we're going to start doing it by location. So, Leandrin brings Matt some pastries, and knowing that she has what has been established as poison on her, we are instantly meant to be suspicious that they're poisoned.
Yeah, that's where I went.
A concern that Matt echoes, showing us, in a funny way, he's funny, we love funny, that he's no dummy. We're also giving him all these humorous moments, I think, to make us as an audience forgive him for his shittiness before.
He was pretty rude at the end of season 1.
Not to mention he also abandoned his friends at a crucial moment.
Yeah.
He's on our level. We're thinking like him. We're like, I think those are poisoned. And he goes, are they poisoned? And we're like, ha, Matt, you and me, we're brain
on
twins.
The level.
Yes. Therefore, I identify with Matt. Therefore, Matt can't be that bad. It's all just storytelling trickery.
That's how it works.
In a positive way. Leandrin assures him that if she wanted to kill him, if I wanted you dead, boy, I could think of far more creative options. Can we trust her? Though she's technically saving the cat by giving him sweets when she doesn't have to, she put the cat in danger, so we're not going to give her that pass.
No.
It doesn't endear us to her. But it does make us question a little bit, like, okay, is she good? Is she bad? Is she good? Is she bad? Is it just a Moraine situation where she seems cruel, but she has good reasons? We don't know.
A good question, right?
We have been with Moraine on the journey, and still people were turning on her online.
That's true.
And Leandrin, we haven't been with her on the journey. Maybe she doesn't suck. Maybe she has her reasons for looking super suspicious. Especially considering that last season with Dana, we had all of the things that we knew to be like markers of safety, like braids and offerings of a nice bed, to be actually really bad things because it had us let our guard down. So the messaging there was never let your guard down, never trust anybody. But the messaging of this episode is, well, sometimes you have to trust some people, but it's really a judgment call. And that judgment call is going to get real stressful. See, we're getting obstacles here because we have to start trusting people, but who the fuck do we trust? Anyway, Leandrin explains that they're merely observing Matt to make sure the effects of the dagger are gone. And not to mention, Moraine put him in this situation in the first place.
She did.
So can we be that mad at Leandrin for taking the bait that was offered by Moraine in the first place?
I mean, it seems like she's doing kind of the right thing by making sure he's not going to grab the dagger again.
Right.
Wherever it may be, or go chasing across the land to get it back.
Yeah. They make sure the effects of the dagger are gone, which presents the question, are they doing that though? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, because it's been 6 months.
Not to mention she just grabbed poison in a previous episode.
Yeah.
Or a previous scene.
Yeah.
And all the other red flags that are about her, red flags.
Hey.
But also there are a lot of red flags about Moraine at the moment. So who knows? Celine's got some red flags at the moment. Everyone's got red flags at the moment. Rand has red flags
killed
at the
a
moment.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah, who is good at... Perrin killed his wife. That was an accident, Matt abandoned his friends. There's lots of fucked up things going on. Not to mention, Rand is trusting Logain this episode, who we definitely know has done some fucked up things.
Quite a lot. Now, do we meet the daughter heir next?
Yes.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. Oh, I love this character.
But hold on. Matt has a funny sequence with the Locke imitation. Endearing him to us because he's funny. And that also, when we first watched the episode, made both of us scream, oh, he's Matt.
Yeah, it's a very Matt thing to do.
Donald Finn is doing a great job.
Phenomenal job.
And then Matt starts Shawshanking again.
Yes.
We get to meet a new character, Elaine. We knew it was coming because we saw all these trunks, all these red trunks and stuff. And both he and I started like smacking each other going, oh my God, it's her.
Oh my God, she's coming.
Oh, the handling of Elaine and her introduction is just chef's kiss perfect.
Now, this is a character, of course, from the books. This is not her introduction in the books. She actually meets a different character first in book 1. I'm glad they introduced her here because this was the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen. Allie, we've talked about character archetypes before.
Mm-hmm.
To be reductive for a moment, if we're looking at the archetype that Elaine appears to be starting out as, the thing that we recognize in her in so many other stories and so many other characters.
Spoiled princess?
Spoiled princess seems to be where we're coming in, right?
Yes, but she's funny, so we forgive her.
Yes. She's funny and genuinely compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think what is she? She comes in, she assumes Egwene is a maid because she has a dozen red-clad maids scurrying about. She shits on Egwene's room.
Not to mention that Egwene is wearing an apron.
Yes. She shits on Egwene's room for being drab and poorly decorated, and then realizes that she's been gauche and immediately walks it back and tries to make it better.
Yeah.
I think not purely because of the social reflection on her, but genuinely because it seems like she wants a friend.
Yeah.
And then she talks about who she is and seems kind of surprised but not upset. I think that's important to know.
Yes.
This is where we first realize maybe she's not as much of a spoiled princess.
She's a little bashful about it.
She's not upset that Egwene doesn't know who she is. She's surprised, but seems to be genuinely pleased that is not going to be like a pre-existing problem, her celebrity.
She's notably excited that she's being treated like any other novice. We meet Elaine right after Egwene was made to feel invisible again.
Yes.
Right? Making things worse when Elaine treats her like a servant, clearly annoying Egwene. Elaine, meanwhile, we realize is incredibly wealthy, but eager to be treated just like everyone else when she shows relief at being put with the other girls. Elaine could easily be played like a bratty mean girl, but Kira Coveney's acting makes her an endearing one-percenter who just puts her foot in her mouth. We then get a hilarious moment, and we will forgive people who are funny, in which Elaine mistakenly thinks Egwene just moved in as well. But when she realizes her mistake, she immediately starts complimenting Egwene. So she's funny and not self-aware, but she also means well, which endears her to us because, again, we will forgive a lot for funny.
That is true.
Just look at how much people like Leandrin, especially after a little verbal spar with potentially walking in on Matt naked.
Yeah.
On Matt naked. We learned that Elaine is daughter heir of Andor. She said the thing. That's the thing she says a lot.
She does say that a lot in the books.
And Egwene is her subject. So Egwene just traded one powerful friend for another.
Although, notably, this powerful friend seems to be less significant in this hierarchy.
Yeah.
Right? In the tower.
That doesn't become clear until a different episode, until a different scene.
Yes.
So, we're not sure, I think, at the conclusion of this scene, whether Egwene is as enamored with Elaine as Elaine is with Egwene.
Yes.
She's, Egwene's still kind of like, like she's smiling at her, but it's not the open smile that Kira Coveney is giving her, the open, delighted smile. It's a reserved smile.
Yeah.
So I think that, honestly, Egwene starts opening up to Elaine when Elaine is shown to be defending an Aes Sedai, willing to work hard, wanting to work hard.
Willing to accept someone else's punishment.
Yeah, willing to accept someone else's punishment and wanting to be treated just like everyone else.
Yeah.
Whereas Nynaeve is unaware of how she's being treated as exceptional, and that is driving Egwene
up the fucking wall. Yeah.
Which is understandable. It would drive anyone up the wall.
Yeah.
If, she was openly rude to an Aes Sedai, and instead of getting punished for it, like any of the other novices would, I'm assuming Nynaeve is not popular with any of the novices, honestly. She gets to take a little trip with Leandrin.
Yes.
That would annoy me. Like, if she were anyone else, they'd be like, then go if you don't want to be here. But with Nynaeve, they're like, no, stay. Let's take a vacation.
Well, there's a lore thing in the books where they tend to try to keep people around until they're sure that they won't accidentally hurt anybody else with their power.
Sure, but Nynaeve even had a mentor that was turned away.
True.
For not being powerful enough.
That's true.
I mean, they said Nynaeve's backstory is it's because she was poor, but that's not the reason.
Why.
Considering they're all too happy to have Nynaeve and Egwene, I am assuming that it was because she wasn't powerful enough. And again, that gets to be careful who is talking. They might have a misunderstanding of things. Elaine speculates that the greatest pairing started as novices living next door to one another, like Cadsuane and Elena Katab.
Yeah.
What could the future hold for them? And again, we have another question, especially as we look at Egwene, seemingly a little unsure yet how she feels about Elaine. Before
we switch to another perspective, we're going to take another quick ad break. Welcome back.
I've decided retroactively that I'm going to combine everything in the White Towers. So,
I think that's appropriate.
Yeah. So there's no E plot. The C plot is going to be Matt, Min, Elaine, Egwene, Nynaeve, Liandrin, Olenna, and the Warders until it becomes.
Well, they are all kind of connected alongside one another.
We're gonna give C plot the general White Tower treatment. Seem fair?
Yeah.
Olenna and her warders meet with Shiriam and try to convince her not to put Nynaeve through the arches yet. There's this great moment of showcasing warder closeness when Ivan hands Olenna a drink without being asked.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Mm-hmm. Maxim shows some annoyance at people saying Nynaeve is the most powerful channeler in 1,000 years because she goes, she's the most powerful channeler, and he goes, in 1,000 years.
That is funny.
Everyone keeps saying so.
I really enjoy that even the people in world are like, oh my fucking God, we know.
But I'm also taking that as due to them seeing Nynaeve as a person,
and their buddy,
and not a means to an end like everyone else is seeing her.
You remember when the 1 second clip of Nynaeve with a sword had the internet in a furor, and then it was just, oh yeah, she's having fun.
Well, yeah, because here my thing about that, and I talked about this last episode, is that I think it was the last episode, right, where she's with the sword.
Yes.
Yeah. I talk about this last episode where it's like that is what she is doing to, one, feel closer to land, and two, have anyone that feels like a peer with her in the tower.
Yep.
Who is not someone she's afraid of. He's friends with her, so he genuinely cares. He's tired of them treating her like just the most powerful channeler in 1,000 years, all caps.
Yeah.
She's also just Nynaeve.
And that's also got to add pressure on her when she quite literally cannot perform.
Right.
You know,
that's
everybody
a lot
going, no,
of
you're the best, you're the best, you're the best. She's like, ha.
That's a lot. So of course she needs to go blow off some steam every now and then. And they're all too willing to help her. Maxim also mentions that Egwene and Elaine are also supposed to be pretty powerful. The Elaine info being new to us, because he says the daughter heir is also supposed to be pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Peep, Olenna, and her warders all sitting the same way in one of the shots.
It's so cute.
That has to be purposeful to showcase their closeness. Olenna says that all of these powerful men and women are coming because the pattern is giving them tools for the last battle. And Shiriam argues that's perhaps why they need Nynaeve at their side. Shiriam is ostensibly a good person, but she's willing to potentially sacrifice Nynaeve for what could be the good of the collective. The lines between good and evil are blurry indeed. Olenna says that she's the mistress of novices, Shiriam, so she's responsible for these girls. Shiriam is violating one of the core tenets of her job. But is that worth it for the sake of the world in Shiriam's view? But Shiriam hand waves about it by saying that Liandrin has a cabal who have called for a vote, and that Olenna will be voting as 1, not 3.
Yeah, because her warders don't vote, and she may not be voting at all.
We're showcasing, notably, in this episode where we're showcasing how much Lan doesn't have power when Moraine is involved, that the warders really have no say over the fate of their friend/friend's girlfriend. It's established that Shiriam might be the type to shift blame.
True.
She's like, don't blame me, blame Liandrin. And is that her being manipulative and playing upon Alana's dislike of Liandrin that's showcased last season? Or is that, and being like, my hands are tied, we might as well stop even debating this? Is this something deeper? We don't know.
Next thing is Egwene.
Oh, wait, I'm not done yet. I'm not done.
Sorry.
So, but also going back to the warder power thing, maybe Liandrin is right here about her opinion about warders because they don't have power like maybe they should.
Yep.
Shiriam realizes also that Olenna and her warders are leaving. Ivan asks Olenna if she wants to stay, but Olenna says, Moraine needs us. The implication is that whatever Moraine is doing is more important than Nynaeve's potential life. Again, bringing us back to the question of what is Moraine doing and who are the good guys?
So it's a running theme here.
We have to abandon our friend to her fate for our other friend.
Yep.
Nynaeve is again not being helpful to the other novices in a kind of funny way when she seeks out Leandrin and one novice asks if she's there to help and Nynaeve says no, and the novice looks so exasperated.
She sure does.
So you just know
It
she's
might even
not
be an accepted. I'm trying to remember. I think it's an accepted.
But she looks so annoyed.
Yeah. Oh, it's this part. It's the okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So now I have to point out the one thing. Now I try not to do consistency things, but I was trying to figure out what the fuck was up with this window, and this is a Cinema Sins level complaint. It's not a real big complaint, but there really shouldn't be light coming out of the window that leads into a darkened hallway. Okay,
here's how I decided this.
Sure.
This is my headcanon.
Sure.
Magic.
All right, I'll take it.
Magic disguise.
When I was watching that, I was like, what doesn't... Oh, fuck.
Well, because otherwise it would draw attention to the window.
I totally agree. I totally understand.
I'm going magic.
I understand why it has to look that way.
I'm going magic.
This is not a real complaint.
Because otherwise it would be such an obvious, like, oh, there's something behind that.
Yes, I'm not saying they should have had it be a dark hallway. I'm being pedantic.
Nah. You?
It's fun sometimes.
Oh, let's see. Oh, a dynamic that I'm wondering if it will come to fruition is, I have a feeling Nynaeve isn't popular among the other novices due to her antics. Nynaeve getting to do her accepted test after her antics will probably not help things. I'm wondering if that dynamic might come to fruition at some point.
Very possible.
Like, I have a feeling Egwene's not the only one who's a little bitter at Nynaeve.
Probably not.
Novice number 2 reveals that Leandrin just left, and Nynaeve pursues her down the hall. Nynaeve finds Leandrin's secret tunnel. Sorry. There are multiple candles in there, suggesting this tunnel has been used a bunch.
Yes. And she follows her all the way to this secret room.
Oh, but first...
Oh, Egwene?
Yeah, we got to go back to Egwene.
All right.
Egwene gives Elaine a tour of the tower, which she discovers was a ruse for Elaine wanting to spend time with her.
Which is very cute.
Very cute.
And endears me to both of them enormously.
Yeah, because Elaine has been in the tower a bunch.
Yes.
Before, because she's daughter Erevander.
Yes.
TM. We find out a few things from this interaction. Novices aren't allowed outside the tower without permission. So Nynaeve could get in some trouble for where she's going.
Yes.
And Elaine grew up going to the tower, implying something about the relationship between Andor and the tower.
Yes.
Elaine is also recognized everywhere she goes, too. Poor Egwene can't catch a break.
Yes.
But Egwene sees the downsides of being so recognized when Shiriam Sedai interrogates Elaine about who let her mates into the tower.
Yes.
Elaine's not getting that special treatment, and her being the center of attention leads to her getting in trouble. Not praised and let on a field trip. Mm-hmm. Elaine decides to bear the blame, endearing her both to Egwene and us by extension.
Now, this is actually a very close parallel to another scene in the book. She's talking to a different Aes Sedai, but in book 2, when they get to the tower, when Elaine and Egwene first meet, actually, they're flouncing down the hallway. Flouncing only because, in my head, Elaine is always kind of excitedly jumping wherever she goes at this point in her life. And
well, it's notable that like at one point they go down some stairs, and Elaine, the actress, she holds her dress like it's like a fine gown while she's going down, where
great.
Egwene's hands are in her pockets.
Yeah. But a similar thing happens where Elaine sees this. It's actually a much more flip, kind of, because Elaine sees this Aes Sedai who she knows and calls out to her by her first name and asks a question. And the Aes Sedai rounds on her and is like, no, not anymore. You are a novice now. Sit down.
Mm-hmm.
So I quite appreciate this moment.
Yeah. But she's really one of the people. And she is also funny because she says before or after breakfast.
Yeah.
By getting hit across the back. I appreciate also that Rafe was like, I'm not going to have it be spanking. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Rafe. Egwene then gets recognized.
Something, if you don't know the Wheel of Time books, something you should know if you are considering picking them up, there is a disproportionate amount of punitive spanking. That's just important to know. Moving on.
Egwene then gets recognized, but only to ask after Nynaeve, which Egwene
Very
echoes
frustrating
to
for
Elaine.
her,
She's
yes.
only ever asked about Nynaeve. They discover Elaine's room has been stripped, and Elaine laughs because she's gotten her wish to be treated like everyone else.
Now we get to Leandrin and Eludrin.
Yes. Nynaeve follows Leandrin to a man named Eludrin, and we discover she has a son, leading us to realize who the man in North Harbor is that Moraine threatened Leandrin with last episode. Someone pointed out to me that Moraine specifically threatened to tell the Red Sisters about him. So it's possible he can also channel. But I think it's more that, like, they're the magic cops. So that's who they would tell about that. But it's unclear.
I think it's less, to my read on this, there is less of a likelihood of she's going to get in trouble for having a secret son, because it doesn't seem like there's a prohibition against that. It seems to me more like this is something that Leandrin certainly does not want known.
I assume she doesn't want her enemies knowing about it.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
I assume there are probably not very nice people in the tower, just as much as there are nice people in the tower.
Yeah, it's
something they could use against her.
We're picking up a lot of politics in the White Tower, and this is a big political piece, it seems.
But here we get a definitive look into Leandrin's humanity, fleshing her out as a character, giving her emotional depth and stakes. It also gives us a look into why the Aes Sedai don't typically have children, because they will likely outlive them. Nynaeve reveals she, like us, thought Leandrin was going to kill someone, again asking us to reevaluate our perceptions and our assumptions.
Who are the good guys?
Nynaeve tries to help Leandrin as Leandrin has helped her, but the emotional stakes of being discovered are too high for Leandrin. Leandrin does threaten to kill Nynaeve, but it could be dismissed as an upset mother. So, you know. And, I mean, Moraine threatened to kill Varen a second ago.
She did do that.
So, who's the good guy? Matt has a funny moment in which he tunnels into another cell and meets Min. The two are just delightful together and immediately start working on something together, breaking out, which unifies them in our mind. Another thing that helps unify people, in addition to costuming, is them doing an activity together.
I have something I want to mention in relation to this when we talk about episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to make a note to refer back to this then.
To us, people working together means friendship.
Yes.
Min and Matt get together.
And she gets a nickname for him. She calls him Possum.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and nicknames are super sign of friendship or affection. Min and Matt get together and Min gives him a bottle of wine. Oh, gift giving, another big thing. Especially when that gift giving is like, well, that might be their only thing that week. Mm-hmm. That's nice, you know? Saying they usually let her work through one a week. I can't help but notice it doesn't seem like Matt's been allowed alcohol.
He quite notably has not.
My assumption is that we will discover Min likes to drink because of her visions.
Seems likely. In fact,
she does it as like an unhealthy coping mechanism.
Don't they discuss that?
I don't think so.
Well, because
but I might have missed it.
She talks about how she could... Oh, well, no, I guess they don't.
I think it's a little implied.
Yeah, and they talk about... well, they have this whole conversation where they discuss sort of...
They discuss while drinking the fact that she can see things.
And Matt is so dismissive of it.
And she takes a really big drink before telling him.
She does.
Which I think, if I recall correctly, she takes a huge drink before telling him, as if that's like giving her the courage to do it, / she's anticipating that his reaction will be, what do you see about me?
Right. And he says, I don't give a fuck. I don't want to know.
Yes. Which I think is, and I'll get to this, is probably super refreshing to her. Also a little shocking.
Doesn't stop her from seeing Matt apparently killing his dear friend.
Yeah, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
It can't be easy to see horrors every day from the time you're small.
No.
Min shows she's funny in her verbal spars with Matt, and that's going to be, again, endearing to an audience. Min mentions she's there because a Red who loves to drink recognized her.
Very funny. Yeah, because last time we saw her, she was hopping on a wagon to get out of Faldara. Worth noting, in the book, Min also just kind of shows up in the tower.
Yeah, we made it motivated.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that having someone who can see visions is probably a
very
useful thing.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that be why they would grab her. But we might forget such an innocuous comment. So it's there, but it's like, it's threaded through in a subtle way.
Which comment?
That she got picked up by a red who likes to drink.
Yeah, okay.
When Matt asks why they're interested in her, Min avoids eye contact, weighing if she should tell him. Yeah, that's an acting moment. She looks away from him, and that's her weighing her options. I assume that this has gone badly in the past, and I'm sure that everyone asks her what she sees about them. So imagine her surprise and delight that she's found someone who thinks that's uninteresting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look how much he brightens when he says he doesn't care.
If I keep drinking this, I'll see things too.
Mm-hmm.
Great line.
As Min leaves, she sees a vision of Matt stabbing Rand, and I'm excited to see how that manifests.
I am also excited to see how that manifests.
It was hard to tell if it's the dagger or not.
It looked like
it, but maybe this implies that the Reds should have kept a closer eye on Matt.
It seems as though perhaps. Next thing we get is Egwene Elaine drinking.
More booze.
God damn, this is fucking funny.
Elaine reveals to Egwene that she can make booze with the power.
That's so fucking cool, man.
Gus and I, why did I almost call you Nynaeve?
I don't know.
Gus and I have this running bit on the podcast about Elaine drinking wine.
And again, we're going to be very vague, but there is some textual justification for Elaine.
She occasionally likes to party.
And having had a drink. And so the fact that she's making bathtub hooch is amazing.
Hysterical to us. We were cracking up. Also mentions she doesn't have friends and is not allowed to have fun. Elaine does.
Oh, this is when they're comparing.
Which I feel like we should watch the I don't have friends, I'm not allowed to have fun development with Elaine. I feel like that's going to be significant, especially as she's making friends with someone with a lot of friends.
Yeah, very likely.
Egwene finally has a space to open up about her feelings with Nynaeve, complaining that Nynaeve is there for her, but also not there when Egwene needs her, and is also not really working hard and doesn't really want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But ironically, Nynaeve needed Egwene's comfort for once, and Egwene wasn't there. Nynaeve realizes that her whole reason for being, taking care of the Two Rivers kids, is on shaky ground, and the reason she is there, that Maxim asked her to discover last episode, right? Her reason for being there was Egwene, is flawed, propelling her to eventually make the decision to enter the Arches, to hopefully, I think, in her perspective, figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
We also get the whole dread of Nynaeve walking down the hall, knowing that she's about to overhear
Egwene. I love that editing.
It's a classic moment, and yet it hits every time because it hurt. Have you ever been in a situation where you've either overheard someone saying something that, it's unfortunate because people need to vent sometimes.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes they need to vent to other people in private. Frustrations happen among friends. It's part of life.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate when you overhear that, and it's unfortunate when someone overhears you doing it.
Yep.
Because the hurt will just intensify. Because, a lot of the time you vent because you don't want to hurt the other person by telling them they've annoyed you.
Yep.
And there's an argument to be made that might stave off further hurt and, la da da da. But especially as you're growing up, if you're in your 20s, you don't always think about that kind of thing.
It does, I think. I don't think it changes Nynaeve's decision.
I think it absolutely informs Nynaeve's decision.
I don't think she was going to turn it down.
I think that she was probably going to take it.
Yeah,
I think
this
Egwene
solidifies it. Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely, yes.
Because now her reason for being there is flawed. And not only that, but Egwene's been like, I feel like she doesn't even want to be here. I feel distant from her and disconnected from her because she seems like she doesn't want to be here. She's like, well, I need to prove to Egwene that I want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
So she's going to do it and hopefully find her purpose. And the heartbreaking thing is both she and Egwene have valid perspectives. It's almost like there's more than one good person, even though they have conflict. Who is good? I'm just, anyway. Elaine also gets to showcase her gifts of perception and honesty by calling out Egwene's jealousy.
This was lovely.
Saying she knows what jealousy looks like. This was lovely. This is a friend going, I'm going to tell you like it is because I'm your friend. which she's putting at risk what is and potentially has been ever her only friend, because she's like, being honest with you is important in a friendship.
Genuine, non-self-interested friend. Yeah.
Lifelong friends, Egwene and Nynaeve, can't be with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like maybe Elaine, friendless Elaine, knows maybe more about having friends than Nynaeve and Egwene.
Perhaps.
Also, it brings up the question, like, who is jealous of Elaine? Like, I'm sure lots of people, but are we going to see some of that?
Could happen. It does put that in mind. And then,
like, does Elaine have a younger sister who's jealous of her or something?
Remains to be seen.
Lots of questions.
And then Liandrin invites her down to do the
We get the
thing.
story,
Yeah.
one of the big story turns. So Nynaeve walks to the knocking door thinking it's Egwene and saying she has nothing to say to her, a reminder of her emotional stakes that will eventually lead to her going into the Arches. Egwene is still on the brain when Nynaeve agrees to go with Liandrin. Liandrin says she would take back what is being offered if she could in response to Nynaeve following her. Is a grudge forming? They really focus on Nynaeve having to overcome her fears here when we know one of the things she fears is the power itself. And that's everything we see of the tower.
Lot of tower.
Lot of tower.
And let's, we're going to take a little break and come back with the D plot. Welcome back to Perrin, who, like, I'm amazed that we're 2-something hours into this, and there's still so much plot to discuss.
Yeah.
Because Perrin actually does a fucking lot of stuff.
Truly. Now I'm like, did I get right? What
yes. No.
I did.
Oh, which plot is which?
Yeah.
Rand has the least screen time, I feel like. But
in terms of the order.
In terms of where his things
now
happen.
I'm all confused.
And in terms of, it's weird because I might argue that the tower is actually the A plot.
I'm changing my mind.
Oh.
Yeah, I think I'm going to retcon hard and go tower, because you know what? I had Egwene, Nynaeve, and Liandrin, Mat, and Min as different plots.
Sure.
But combining them makes them clearly the A plot.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I'm wrong. I renege entirely and say that all is the A plot.
So is Rand the C plot? Even though he's got the cold open and the ending.
Right, because he presents himself like he's the A plot, and I just like autopiloted him as the A plot. But as I'm reading it, I'm like, I am so wrong. I disagree with Pastally entirely. I think he has the C plot.
Even though
I would switch them.
His does forward the story pretty hard, though.
Well,
it's
here actually,
see, this is where the more complicated the episodes get, the harder it is to apply this original framework, which is a good thing.
We would still apply the framework. It's just that, like, the like A plots always forward the structure, the plot, and B plots always do the emotional work. Tends to get blurrier and blurrier.
Right.
Does that make sense? So, like. Yeah. The plots are super complicated at this point, so it's a little less clean.
And interwoven.
Yeah.
This might also be a symptom of the fact that 4 of the plots take place in the same place, and 2 other plots take place in 2 different places.
I mean, yeah. I think it will become clearer. I'm going to start dividing them by location. Yeah, I think it's unfairly weighted in the tower's direction because there are, like, multiple plots in there as opposed to one plot in the other places. So I'm going to start eventually, I think, dividing it by location.
Sure. I mean,
and that will make it easier to deduce, I think.
Here's the tricky thing, though. These first 3 episodes, the tower is the major epicenter of everything.
Well, because now I'm also going, do I want to make, this is where I'm at. I'm like, do I want to make Rand? Do I want to make the tower, the A plot, Perrin the B plot,
and Rand the
and Rand / Moraine and Lan.
Well, they're different plots.
C and D.
It's weird because I feel like Rand does have the most plot forwarding action.
I'm going to say, here's what I'm going to say.
No, maybe not. At the end of the day, it doesn't super matter. It's just a fun exercise.
I think I was right. I was right before.
You're
Rand
going
is
back.
A.
Rand is A.
Rand is A.
Okay.
Because he has the most plot forwarding stuff. Well, it's hard.
I mean, Nynaeve could very easily be A.
I'm gonna switch the Tower and Rand.
Okay.
Rand C. I'm going Rand C. They were tricking me with his placement.
Sure.
Final answer. All right. Rafe, I want to see the receipts. What did you have down as the A plot, sir?
So Perrin.
Okay.
Perrin definitely being a D plot.
Uno? Okay, yeah.
Or
Uno.
maybe not.
I know. This is why I was like, I might put Perrin at B.
I love that this is happening, by the way. This is great.
No, I'm fucked up by this episode.
Yeah, this is fantastic this is happening.
Like Perrin is in that one room.
Yes.
Okay.
Our final plot of the episode.
Oof. Final plot. We got this.
Perrin.
Okay. All right. So we start with Uno humorously complaining about Elias, again, calling attention to him because
he's funny.
We love people who are funny. We pay attention to people who are funny. Elias reveals that the Trollocs have crossed at the stream. I saw a couple questions from people online being like, how did they cross the stream? It's established Trollocs can't swim. If you look, there's a dock across the stream. What I'm assuming is that they took the boat across and then sunk the boat. Let it drift. So
and it
that
didn't
they couldn't
look like
be followed.
that deep of a stream. You know, I think when we were talking about Terran Ferry in season 1, that was a big ass Idaho river. This did not look like that big of a river.
True. Also true. It looked pretty shallow. So Perrin gets his sword out. My thing about Perrin is I feel like what they're doing with him is something that I've joked that Egwene does a lot in the books, which is she kind of attaches herself to whatever culture she's with.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of goes very hard into whatever that space is. Yeah, whatever her foreign exchange life is what she
Without
latches
being specific,
onto.
we're not going to be specific.
Well, like in the White Tower, as an example.
Yes.
She kind of gloms onto people pretty fast and adapts to them. I think Perrin being so lost and trying to figure out what his relationship to violence is, it makes sense to me that they're doing something a little bit similar with his character where they're like, he would, in his efforts to look for where he fits, try on a little bit some of the cultures that he encounters. So for a bit, he was fully Tinker, really trying to the Tinker thing out. And then now that he's with the Shienarans, he's kind of getting in line with the Shienarans and what their philosophy toward everything is.
Yeah.
I think this is good for him. I think he saw that maybe the nonviolence is not necessarily super realistic in this world, which I think was confirmed for him last episode. That, you know, you're not going to really go through this unscathed, even if you are not a violent person. So perhaps there is a middle ground to be found. Makes
sense to me.
Perrin sees a woman in the window, possibly part of his wolf senses.
This was fun. This is another moment that is almost, it is actually action for action directly from the book.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to a different character.
Yes.
In the book. But I was watching the action that was happening at this dining room table, and there is a passage in the book where somebody observes the exact same thing happening, but it's also not real.
Yeah.
It had already happened before.
And I saw some people worrying about people's ability to tell the difference between what Min can do and what Perrin can do apart, because they are different.
Yeah.
But Min sees the future and Perrin sees the past. Yeah. So I'm not particularly
concerned about that at all.
Yeah.
Although we do get that lovely moment where he kind of locks eyes with Elias.
Yeah.
As he spins all the way around.
Yeah, I go through this shot for shot.
Oh,
but
go ahead.
One thing that I wanted to say that I liked is I feel like them switching it to be Perrin as the protagonist gives them a really good in to explain everything wolfy. And, you know, when we're talking about Perrin and his abilities, a lot of it has to do with scent in the books and his being able to smell things and communicate with wolves. And I was really kicking myself, like questioning, how would I do this? Because smell-o-vision really didn't take off, which is fine and fair. So how do we, in the age where smell-o-vision isn't a thing, how do we translate what Perrin can do on screen in a way that visually makes sense? And I think they really managed to do that in a way that I didn't think of, but I really love.
Yeah.
Because I also thought, well, you could also have what has become a slightly corny, wolf voiceover.
It could also, because it is also a thing in the books that the wolves communicate by sending images to each other.
They do.
So it could also be that.
I think it is. In seeing an entire family killed along with the Tinkers they saw before, Perrin is seeing that there are some things that are going to be point blank evil. Probably.
Yes. Well, and then we get to the Fade nailed to the door.
But again, through all of this, we have Ingtar there with his lingering question of asking a bad person, quote unquote, why they did the things they did. Maybe there was a reason for this.
Mm-hmm.
Also, potentially him seeing things like the Tinker camp and the little decimated domestic scene is going to have chilling reminders for him of Beltane.
Yeah, a little bit.
Perrin's clothing also now looks a bit like armor.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
This is character development through costume. And then Elias says to him, know the difference between vision and reality. You don't get lost so easily. So it's also kind of, again, hearkening back to how do we know the difference between good people and bad people? How do we know what's good and what's bad? Elias is kind of going like, well, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck. And Perrin says to him, whatever you're doing to me, I want no part of it. And he says, it doesn't work that way. We are getting a sense of Perrin's distrust of his powers and are unsure along with him what it is and whether it's good.
Yeah.
It's also a thread that connects this plotline to Nynaeve and Rand's abilities and how they're questioning them as well. We get Elias first telling Perrin something about his powers, primarily that they're here to stay. We see the Fade nailed to the door that was discovered by Massima straight out of the books, and we get a new question introduced. What could do that to a Fade? Again, we have all of these questions that keep coming up. Questions are important. Seeing these powers and understanding these powers slowly so that first timers can understand them through Perrin's eyes, pardon the pun,
boo,
is also important because if Elias was a protagonist, right, and we just saw him fully in his wolfy powers and with everything that he could do, that's much harder to explain in a way that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. No, Perrin learning is us learning.
Yeah, we are spoon feeding this very slowly to Perrin, in part so that we can spoon feed it very slowly to the audience.
Perrin is Ice-T in Law and Order SVU.
Yes, but
right?
So are we.
Yes. Well, that's not a...
It's our first day on the force.
Yeah, it's because you need a character. This is a reference to a John Mulaney sketch or comedy routine, but you need a character there who doesn't know what's going on all the time necessarily, so that by explaining it to them, it can be explained to you.
Yeah.
It's not a book where we can just be in his head and he can think, and I'm doing this, which is this thing.
And the question of what could do that to a Fade, that's emphasized further by the fact that we just saw how powerful the Fades can be in the episode prior. So that's set up for this, for this to be a big deal. There was also a really good cut of Elias standing there and some screams happening after they see the Fade. Like maybe he's still seeing things, and then cut to the asylum.
Pretty
like
pretty
we
well
hear
handled,
the
man.
Screams of the asylum as a pre-lap, but the focus is on Elias kind of like looking around. It's as if in the shot he's still seeing things, and then we cut to and we realize the screams are actually from the asylum. I just thought that was a really smooth transition.
Yeah.
Really nicely done. God, we spend a lot of time in the tower.
We spend a ton of time in the tower.
Jesus.
She's scrolling through her notes.
Ingtar, Perrin, and the rest go to the village by the river. And Perrin has a moment in which the lionfish being slaughtered has an overwhelming smell. Again, Perrin's powers coming into play. Elias isn't coming into the inn because he prefers to sleep under the stars. Again, a call to the wildness of his nature that might be within Perrin that has something to do with wolves. And it also ultimately is a decision that saves him from being taken by the Seanchan.
I also appreciated the very subtle nod to lionfish.
Which is something from the books.
Something mentioned in the books as more intimidating than a real life lionfish, which I think is just poisonous but small.
I think it's like spiky, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, because he gets
venomous, I'm sorry.
Elias avoids getting taken by the Seanchan, maybe there is something too in this otherworldly wolfish life. Maybe there's something to it. Elias tells Perrin, they're not your pack, you know. Again, using wolfish language.
Yes.
But also telling Perrin that his search to figure out his philosophy toward violence and where he fits within that spectrum is still ongoing.
So we should discuss Elias being here now, because Elias in the book is in book 1.
Right.
The bulk of what happens with Elias that is happening now in the show happened in book 1 when Perrin and Egwene were on the road. Perrin kind of gets this whole primer intro into wolfiness. Elias is kind of cryptic.
Right.
Frankly, a little bit kinder in the book, but I kind of appreciate the mystique that I believe the actor's name is Gary Beadle.
Yeah, and
is bringing to it.
I feel like the reason why they're having him be more standoffish, and more otherworld, right? More mysterious.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Is because I think they're playing with the who is the monster question.
Absolutely.
And
that's
think
the thematic question of the season.
As Perrin starts to understand his abilities better and whether or not they are positive, we will start to understand better who Elias is.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, I think it is intentionally arm's length right now because I think Perrin is unsure whether or not he can trust Elias, and so we need to be unsure whether or not we can trust Elias.
And I feel like also the choice to kind of delay this, for lack of a better term, training sequence to season 2, I have to think this is because in outlining and in drafting, they went, we cannot do the one power is the magic system, but also there's a girl who sees things, but also some people are kind of half wolf, talky wolf thing guys all at once, because that's going to be too much information for people to, in a visual medium where you only have about 8 hours to juggle and digest while also telling the story that we want to tell.
Right.
Because really, I mean, we've spent 2 episodes explaining and walking through what's going on with Perrin's stuff without being too specific about next episode. There's more. So it takes quite a lot of screen time for us to kind of parse through what is going on with Perrin. And rather than having Elias simply sit down and tell him everything right out of the gate, I appreciate that they're layering in this uncertainty. Not only because I think it's good storytelling, but because I think it ties in really well with Perrin's ongoing struggle with violence. Because when you think of a wolf, yes, they're big dogs, they're big wild dogs, but also, you know, they're carnivorous. They are predators. Right? They are not docile, peaceful creatures.
Wolves? No.
No,
they're not dogs. As much as I go doggy every time one comes on screen.
They're
kill not
you.
Dogs. But the way I would die trying to pet one is very real.
But what I appreciate kind of about the layering in of Perrin and his relationship to violence and the wolves is that there is very good reason for Perrin to be distrustful, I guess, of this, considering what the common associations are with wolves, I think. And I think that introducing this as like, hey, this is part of your identity. You can't get rid of it. Deal with it. And having that thing that you are connected to be carnivorous beasts is very well placed here, right? Yeah. This is Perrin. Yeah. Perrin, it seems as though Perrin cannot simply choose pacifism, probably, because part of him is, you know, tied to wolves, and wolves don't really go in for pacifism. So
what?
All that to say,
you mean I can't pet one?
I wouldn't.
Fine.
All that to say, I understand why this is in season 2 as opposed to season 1.
So the climax.
Yes.
Of the
Oh my
episode.
God, what a fucking battle this was.
So we talked about people being locked out, right? And locked in.
Yes.
So the climax is the Shan-Chan break-in.
Break in. Yeah. That works. And lock up.
How
it
interesting to play with this motif in this episode. The Shan-Chan attack the village Perrin and Co. are at. Loyal is given the King Kong treatment in this, which at first might seem silly. But then you get to see what happens when he's angry. This is a deliberate attempt, I think, to make Loyal look animalistic, or look like he's being treated like an animal when we've gotten to know him as a person.
Yes.
We've been given this like very, this deep insight into his personhood.
Yeah, he's a soft-hearted cinnamon roll who is shaped like friend.
And so to see him then treated like an animal, which again, we're going back to the who is a monster, who isn't, right? We definitively in our hearts know Loyal is not a monster, but he's being treated like one here.
Yeah.
Right? Like a classic movie monster.
Yeah.
And that should be horrifying to us.
Yes. And it is. It's fucked
And
up.
it is. It's fucked up because we're like, that is our book-loving cinnamon roll.
That's our soft boy. And then he just starts fucking throwing people.
Yeah, and then we realize, well, you shouldn't piss off an Ogier.
Yes. There is a line in the books, which is to anger an Ogier is to bring a mountain down on your head.
Yeah, and boy, was it. Also, like I know we constantly are going on about the fight choreo in the show, but
Holy fuck.
Impressive athleticism on the parts of everyone in this scene. Unbelievable.
Really fantastic fight sequence.
I mean, and to add the water as an additional element of danger, because like you have them like taking turns, fake drowning each other, right?
Yep.
That can go very, very wrong.
Yep.
So you have to be even more careful during what would be a chaotic scene with a lot of yelling, right?
Yep.
If something is a problem and you yell hold, that's not going to be heard as well.
No.
Right? I'm sure they had some kind of hand signal, and I'm sure they had some kind of
they know what they're
tap sequence or something to be like, stop, actually, for real, though.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing, is when you're doing a drowning scene, you're supposed to act like you're drowning. So then the actor can't tell whether or not they're actually drowning you or if you're just a really good actor.
Now, if you have a fight choreographer, which
They'll
they
have prepared for that.
They will have prepared for this. Unlike a certain other show, which I will not name, where they actually waterboarded an actress for an entire day of filming.
That's not good.
This, yeah. This I expect was done more carefully and tactfully.
Yeah, just because you're an actor doesn't mean you're putting your literal life on the line for your craft, and you shouldn't be, because at the end of the day, we're all adults playing make-believe.
And it's cool make-believe.
It's cool make-believe, but we don't want anyone dying for the make-believe.
No.
And there have been instances where that has happened, so we take that very seriously. So earlier in this episode, we had Leandrin convincing Nynaeve that the magic that she's so afraid of is beneficial to people.
Yes.
Right? And here, we see the horrific reality of what magic can do to ordinary people.
Oh, yeah. The crowd control fucking blast you into the sun weave.
Yeah.
That these four women use.
And which also reflects on all of the other plot lines, especially Moraine and Lan.
I think it's also worth noting, it's really quite striking, this scene, watching these two young, fairly, small-looking women just trot up and face off against these Shinarans and Perrin and Loyal, who have just basically laid waste to like a quarter of the invading army, and not even flinch.
All right.
You watch that and you go, oh, something's very wrong here. And the way that is presented, the nonchalance that these four bring with them as they just drop a fucking train on our heroes.
Right. Well, and then you realize that in some way or another, Ishamael is involved with that side.
Yes.
So this is the power that the dark has, the people who are against our babies.
Or at least has access to, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is quite something when that palanquin comes in. What a ridiculous looking thing. I love it so much. It's so extra.
It's so extra and intimidating.
And it works. And but when you have that kind of overwhelming force, of course you're going to walk in, you're going to get brought in by like 80 fucking slaves on a palanquin.
Rather than breaking out of a prison, Perrin finds himself in one.
Yep.
Lights come up on a new day and a literal new reality as a huge palanquin ominously moves forward with the nail lady, which is what I'm calling her for right now.
Yes, quite long nails.
And to Shamael, Suroth asks, are they ready? We know in Perrin's case the answer is no. He's literally just beginning to really learn anything about what he is and what he can do. He's barely learned anything. But as Shamael says, they'll have to be, giving us some dread for the future.
And he just stares at Perrin.
And there's a stare off with Perrin and Perrin's color-changing eyeballs. All right. Any thoughts?
No, it's a good episode. You know, there are many obstacles in this obstacle of obstacles episode.
The obstacles of obstacles episode. Yes.
Yeah. You know, Matt thinks he breaks out, but he is broken into another cell. It's Rand breaks in. A lot of progress made.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about episode 3 because I really do kind of feel like these first 3 episodes flow together really, really well.
Me too.
We would have talked about all 3 of them at once, but it would have been 10 hours long, and we can only release so many 10-hour podcasts.
Right. Next episode is the story turn episode. That is going to be new information that gets introduced, new stakes, new obstacles, essentially new information that propels us to the midpoint.
Yes.
So that mini climax in the middle of the season. I'm excited to see what the new information is.
Likewise. And if you have not read as far as Allie has read in The Wheel of Time, which again is up to the end of book 10, you should leave right now because we're going to talk about it.
It's a spoiler, babies. Spoiler, 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 spoiler.
Welcome to all the people who have joined us for this spoilery section of things Allie has read, which is anything up to and including the end of CROSSROADS of Twilight.
Mm-hmm.
Good episode, man.
Oh my god,
really quite good.
I have a lot to. I mean, I have
this is
a little
good,
to talk about.
I have a couple things. I think we should talk about Eludrin. We should talk about Leandrin having a son.
Oh, I have a theory.
Yes,
I have a theory.
Yes.
So first, we have the slash over Matt's eye in the first dream sequence that Rand has, where he's killing his friends.
Okay.
I've long had a theory that Matt loses an eye.
You have, that's true.
Felt like potential foreshadowing.
It could be.
Rafe's trying his own Robert Jordan foreshadowing, am I right? Also, what an echo of Dragonmount and what Luce Theron did.
Oh, yeah.
That whole first sequence. And also, I feel like Lanfear's getting at that a little bit too with your rates are too, or no, Rand accidentally being ironic and saying your rates are too steep for me to Lanfear.
That was funny.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty funny. Really, like all the banter between them.
There's so much good banter between Lanfear and Rand. Thank God I can finally call her Rand.
I know.
Lanfear. Randfear.
Celine. No.
Can Lanfear see into his dreams here?
I'm sure she can. That's her whole bag.
Every night ends the same has a double meaning.
Yeah. You know she's fucking with that.
She's like, you're still dreaming about that Egwene girl.
Yeah.
I just want you to kill me in your dreams.
Let's talk about...
Wait. I have one more thing about this dream.
Okay,
I have one more thing about this dream.
I'm saying these things because if I don't talk about them, I'm going to forget about what I was going to talk about.
Write them down like I do.
No.
It makes way more sense that they'd try and have a place for these mad people stripped of their power to go. I've always said, like, where is the, like, grippy sock vacation for these crazy people?
I don't think that all these people are male channelers.
Well, no, I don't think they're all male channelers, but I think some of them are.
Oh, okay. Sure. I thought you were positing that all of these folks were gentled men.
No, I think it would make sense though for them to have somewhere for them to put them.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming the Reds are going around everywhere.
Well,
we've seen it happen.
But they're supposed to take them back to the tower.
Yeah, but for how long? Their whole lives? How many of them? I don't know.
Would keep and study them there.
It just made sense to me that Logain would be here.
Oh, no, I like it. It works for me, yeah.
Okay. What was your thought, darling? What did you want to talk about?
I wanted to talk about Eludrin, and I wanted to talk about Selene and the way they're doing Selene and how devious she is.
Okay. Can we get there when I get there in my notes?
Of course.
Oh, Moraine talking to Lan. She says, if I'm to get to the docks by sunset. And I went...
Every time Moraine says docks, I get anxious.
And she says it like a few times.
I don't think they're doing that this season. That'd be too quick, in my opinion. And I'm like almost certain she's filming in season 3.
I think it's just foreshadowing.
Yeah.
I don't think that Moraine gets doxed until season 4.
Season 4?
It feels like a midpoint moment to me.
Yeah. Yeah, or end of season 3.
I could see end of season 3 or sometime in season 4.
Because
I'd go either episode 4. Well, because I think that next season's going to be a lot of Aiel shit.
Probably, yeah.
And the introduction of new Forsaken. It's the story turn season, so we're going to get the introduction of the Forsaken and where they are.
Well, and
we're going to get the Aiel shit.
If we're doing a close adaptation of book 4, which Rafe suggested they are, then we might be back to having pretty reliable A, B, and C plots again. Because book 4 really only has 3 major plots.
Yeah.
You know, there's Tenchiko, there's the 2 rivers, and there's Roydian, and then the tower is like another one.
I think there are a bunch of people within that, so I think we're probably going to be going by location.
But it's more evenly balanced than right now. It's almost all tower, so that's I think why we're having so much trouble figuring out what is what.
I've decided that tower is A.
Okay.
Yeah, I've decided tower's A this episode. I'm switching them. They tried to hit me with the okie doke.
Freak you with the okie doke.
Freak me with the okie doke. During the Perrin Wolf thing where he was like seeing the flies.
Yes.
Event happen. The Myrddraal is in the spot Ingtar is standing, which I thought was really interesting.
As they pan, Ingtar is standing there in slow motion with his sword out, and you could mistake that for being part of it.
Yes.
Which I thought was quite interesting.
Clever.
Oh, and on the subject of Ingtar, people are talking about why does he have his armor on in the battle at the end? Perhaps he knew this was coming.
Who?
Ingtar.
Oh, yeah.
The attack.
Yeah. I think that's possible.
Very, very likely. Because he's wearing full-ass armor.
Because Massima doesn't have his armor on.
Hot Seam is fighting shirtless.
Which no one was complaining about.
No.
And then, I've always said that the thesis of Perrin would be embrace your powers and who you are. And Elias is already giving us that. And I appreciate somebody saying this to him.
Yeah, but I like that they're making Elias...
not scary.
He's not scary.
That's not the right word, but he is mysterious. So there is a little bit of an element of like, should we trust him? Should we not?
Well, and like Book Elias is just basically not just. He's a wild man, right? But he can be very civilized, and he follows society's rules, and then he leaves. Whereas what I like about Show Elias is it is very clear to me he belongs with the wolves.
And I'm going to be honest with you, Elias is the most relatable character in this show for me so far.
Yeah?
Oh my God. Would rather hang out with dogs than people? Would rather sleep under the stars?
Sure.
Yeah. Would rather be out in nature, fucking off by himself than deal with like all that is humanity. 100%. Elias is the most relatable character. And I'm like, we would be friends. So I'm like, I have no trouble trusting Elias from the get, but I could see a world in which Perrin might not trust Elias from the get.
Yes.
And that to me feels in keeping with Perrin's journey.
Yes. Which is another reason I'm glad they kicked Elias back to, because I'm thinking about in the book, Perrin doesn't have any violence things happen until he meets up with Elias. And then they have the thing where the birds almost kill them.
Yeah.
And then he kills the White Cloaks after the White Cloaks kill Hopper.
And I'm assuming he had something to do with the wolves coming in the nick of time for Perrin that.
Oh, in episode 7?
Season 1. Yeah. I'm
assuming.
Yeah.
Or 6 or whatever it was. Yeah, I probably.
I'm assuming that's got to be true.
Whatever episode that was.
Ooh, I don't want to know what's in those cook pots, is what I said.
No, gross.
When they looked at the Trolloc cook
Icky, nasty,
pots,
gross.
I was like, ooh, I don't want to know what's in there, considering they just massacred that whole family. I just wrote Squeal, future Queen of Andor and future Amyrlin. When
pretty great.
Elaine says, what does the future have in store for us? I was like, a lot. Oh, come on, she gets crowned. Oh, Varen talking about Tome and Head, battles in the sky, branded hand that wields it.
Yeah.
Wields the sword. Giving very 5 will ride forth.
Yes.
And Battle in the Sky is confirmed as our point of no return season moment.
Yes.
I've been saying that I think we're going to have that the cat's out of the bag moment either in episode 7 or 8 where here he is. We see the dragon reborn, because right now it's a lot of like, how do we keep this a secret? How do we keep this to ourselves? How do we keep this a secret? That is, we're going to, I think the climax of this book, of this season is going to be like, the question is like, will we get back together? Like, how will we get back together? But I think because we're stronger together, but I think by the end of 8, the cat's going to be out of the bag that Rand is the dragon reborn.
Probably.
What did you want to say?
Well, I have more like big picture stuff to talk about if you want to do your popcorn stuff bouncing around first.
Yeah. Leandrin being shrouded in black is a nice costuming choice.
Very good.
I know that it's also just like makes her look mysterious, but I've been noticing that for some characters, we're getting pops of black on people that might be suspicious.
Yeah.
I would lovingly like the fandom to remain calm in the face of incomplete information.
That's an evergreen thing to say. And I fully support everybody being excited and theorizing. But to quote yourself, Allie, in episode 7 of last season, let's see what they do with it.
Let's see what they do with it.
Let's see what they do with it.
A lot of the time we've been finding that our assumptions, when we go off into assumption land, has not been the reality of the situation. So let's just let it.
Yeah. If it disappoints us down the line, it disappoints us down the line. But let's not decide preemptively that because X thing is happening, Y thing in the books must not be.
Right.
Or anything else. Because I think it is very easy for us to determine, well, they can't reach this conclusion because they have to hit this intermediary step first, and this thing that they did precludes the intermediary step. There are a lot of ways to reach almost every conclusion in this series, and there are a lot of journeys that are going to hit the same beats and allow for the same developments in the characters that are not the same exact things that happen, which is really kind of like what so far this entire season feels like to me. Yeah. Because it basically feels so far like we've taken The Great Hunt, chopped it into pieces, put it in a bag, shaken the bag up, and now we're pulling bits out and pasting them into a line in a good way. Yeah,
I think this season has so far been really strong.
Yeah, it's got specific stuff from the books. It's just going to be different, right? Like the flies. Because in the book, that's a cool fucking thing. And according to Robert Jordan, it was Padden Fane's time trap, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, to me, it was motivated this time by something that was going to be relevant to us as viewers.
Yeah.
And not confusing to us.
And I like it in
viewers.
The book. I'm not saying I don't. It's weird, and I like that it's weird, and it's fucking creepy as shit. And I think the way that they did it in the show allows it to be more than a single creepy as shit thing that happens once and then is never remarked upon again.
Yeah. There was also, I felt like, a lot of concern last season about the fact that they had not explained Perrin's powers or Sidene, Sidar, weaves, all of those things. We've been doing that this season. I think it's because we are bringing them up when they are going to be most relevant. Because if we are dropping this exposition randomly in the middle of, I don't know, a flight from Shatter Logoth, it doesn't feel like an organic time to be having that conversation. We can drop that as exposition in a book because it's not necessarily going to interrupt the flow and take all this time and feel unnatural. But for two characters to have a conversation about something that feels completely random, that is going to take us all out of it. We're going to forget it down the road. We need to remind people or educate people about the necessary exposition when it's relevant and happening in a visually impactful enough way that information is going to stick with them.
And I think it's also important to remember that we have to put a learning curve on this stuff because the Wheel of Time is 4.4 million words of lore. And we know it. Those of you who are listening now, y'all know it backwards and forwards, up and down. You've probably been part of it for, it could be as long as 30 years or longer.
Which is amazing.
So there is an intricate and innate understanding that you already have and that you understandably want to be present from the get-go, but you didn't have it from the get-go.
No.
You had to start with Eye of the World, where Moiraine has a staff that helps her do magic, right?
Right.
You had to start from Eye of the World, where I'm trying to think of the other weird Eye of the World isms, where healing actually leaves a permanent connection to somebody.
Right.
So while I totally understand the concern about, well, they haven't made this clear yet, if they're not going to, you figured it out when I'm talking to you, listener, when you read it, and it took time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until book 4 that you learned about gateways, and it wasn't until book 2 really that you learned about linking, and it wasn't until book I'm trying to think of other things that are brought forward, 3 that you really learned about Terangrial. Wasn't really into, so they're going to, I understand that some of these things may seem more foundational than others, Sidene, Sidar. They're gonna give it to us. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen. It's been implied, but not outright stated so far. So you can totally tell your non-reader friends, hey, actually, the magics have two different names. If you want, if they're curious, that's not going to hurt. But it's also, so far we know, guy magic, one thing, girl magic, other thing.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get the names. It'll come.
Yeah. And we've gotten the names in the origin stories already.
Yeah.
They're just going to find a time to drop that in the show that is more relevant at a more relevant time.
I mean, the game Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has tutorials and little mini tutorials up until the final boss. So, they're going to be teaching us things for quite a long time.
There's lots of time. Yeah, but like I said, it's got to be done at impactful enough moments that information is going to stick with us. Because if they just front-loaded a bunch of stuff right off the bat,
I'm not going to...
I'm not going to remember.
Your mother isn't going to remember.
My mother will not remember.
Your mother, the eternal average viewer, and that is a compliment.
Yes. Well, because she's just not someone... I mean, she loved Game of Thrones, which I never expected. I never expected that in a million years. I never told them about the show. They heard about the show from coworkers, and then they were like... And then they would call me every Sunday to have a following after the show rundown of what happened.
Yes.
So that's your average TV watcher. Is they watched the episode and didn't understand what happened. They were there for the vibes.
Well,
and then called me. No,
but let's be clear here. We're not saying people are
stupid.
We're not saying people are stupid, so don't explain things, and we're also not saying don't explain things because they won't get it. Or we're also not saying that it's hopeless to try to explain things. What we're saying is you have to be very careful with how you parcel out lore in a TV show.
Right. Well, yeah, what I'm saying is there are people that do not regularly consume fantasy, and therefore the learning curve is going to be steeper for them than someone who's like, oh yeah, Moon Tea. I've read about that in 4 different fantasy series. It's got 4 different names, but I pretty much have a shorthand for what that means.
And again, that also doesn't mean they're dumbing it down. Y'all read Eye of the World. Eye of the World is missing a lot of the shit that is in the later books. They are presenting the information in a different order and of differing levels of importance to how it is presented in the books.
Okay.
Anyway, that was a long tangent.
Matt asking Min if she's coming on to him when she's going to end up with his best friend had me in stitches.
Very funny.
Matt's not interested. Those are little moments that they're injecting for the people who know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They're doing that for you.
For you.
That's you. That's for you. They're doing that. But it's also the brilliance of it is that it's a joke. We have the low hanging fruit joke where it's like, he's just being like snarky and snide like he is. And I'm starting to fall for him as a character because he's funny. And then we have the meta joke within that joke that is for you. And that's what's great is we've got high hanging fruit and low hanging fruit in one joke. That's hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Really
good writing. Well done. Matt's not interested in the future. And then in my head, I was like, he's going to be too busy with the past. Am I right?
That's good.
Okay, we go back to that classic romance scene, and now we're finally getting to talk about Celine.
Yeah.
We're back at that classic romance scene structure. And I've seen a couple texts from first-time watchers, right? Who are like, oh my God, that was such a romantic scene. Yeah. It's because they used all the classic romance tropes except for the meet cute, which is telling us this isn't ordained by the gods. This is not Rand's real partner. We didn't get the meet cute. We didn't get the confirmation that we've had since freaking Romeo and Juliet, Tristan and Isolde, that like the gods want this to happen. But everything else is classic romance beats. And that's on purpose.
I really do quite like the more adult tack they've taken here on the Rand-Celine relationship. As much as I love sepia tone Grolm, which is, it's great fun. Rand reads like a 13-year-old.
Well, and also, respectfully, Rand looks like a dumb fuck.
That too.
In that order of events, I was screaming the entire time, oh my God, she's sketchy. Please, for the love of God. She's so sketchy. My God, Rand. Fucking see past her boobies and realize that she's sketchy. But he's meeting her in an innocuous way. She seems like an innocuous person. She could be anybody. She's also incredibly hot, but most actors are pretty good looking. So, it makes him feel less like a dumbass.
I loved that she's just there. She doesn't get any kind of introduction. She doesn't get any kind of reveal. She simply is in the bed.
Well, and it makes sense that after everything that Rand has gone through, he wants somebody. He just doesn't want to endanger the people he loves.
Yeah.
And now, of course, it is also likely that someone this young who is this emotionally fraught would also start to feel for someone he's sleeping with.
Mm-hmm.
Rand is a sweet baby angel, and we're getting sweet baby angel Rand.
Yeah, Rand doesn't seem like the type who could sustainably have a no strings attached.
Yeah.
He cares too much about everything. And that's his whole fucking thing in the books is he cares too much and he's trying to prevent himself from caring, right? I must be hard. I can't let this hurt. Mm-hmm. I can't feel this. I can't let these things happen to me.
But again, we're getting at the high hanging fruit and low hanging fruit in this because we have seen this scene to an extent before,
yes.
Right? We've seen I have a man in my past who hurt me. You help me,
Oh God, it was brilliant.
And we've seen there's this woman I can't forget. And we've seen I don't want to hurt you. You can't. We've seen that as a romance beat before, right? Rafe and co and the rest of the actors are specifically playing on your expectations for a romance to make us go, oh, this is soft, squishy love. And I get this. I understand this. I understand that these two need each other because they're both damaged. We're giving them feelings of them being damaged. But the additional brilliance of this scene is that we all know who are in on this joke, right? Who Lanfear is talking about,
and
which is
him.
the person right next to him.
Yeah.
We know that she is very aware of who Egwene is, right? Because if she's seeing into his dreams, she knows who that is. And she's probably asking him about her so that she can learn more about her, which is bad because eventually she tries to peel her like a grape. And then in addition to that, Yeah, there's all the little subtextual things that is being put in there. When I'm with you, I can pretend you're him. Also, her basically asking, for more information on Gwen. And I don't want to hurt you. You can't. He really can't.
He literally cannot.
He literally cannot do that.
That was a great double meaning.
Brilliant. And like, you can only fully appreciate that scene once you understand all the subtext. But you can still appreciate the scene as someone who's a first-time audience member. They can go, oh, how romantic.
And I think, honestly, that even ties back to what I was saying a minute ago about them parceling out information. If you watch that scene with limited information, you still like it, and you like different things about it, and you understand different things about it. If you watch that scene with full information, you get a bunch of other shit that other people didn't pick up on, but they still had a full experience of experiencing it.
And once again, we're getting back to the who is a monster? Who can you trust? This like beautiful, damaged woman who Rand is sleeping with. We start to trust her. We like her. She's pretty. She's nice. We see her doing like nice things for Rand, helping him get through what he's going through. She's a monster. She doesn't look like one, but guess what? Not all monsters are scary looking.
Nope.
It's beautiful.
And now with that being said, let's take a quick break for a couple of ads. Welcome back.
I hope you got an ad for Spirit Halloween.
Oh, that would be, well, I don't know when these are going to go up.
Oh, that's true. We don't know when the strike's going to end.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
we have since learned that we SAG asked us not to post these until the strike's over.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna.
And that's fine.
Pay your artists.
Oh my God. Elaine with the booze and her saying, I like to tinker with things.
Oh my God. Yeah, there
because
you go.
Because she becomes Miss Engineer. Amazing. Oh, and when Elaine was like, I know what jealousy looks like. I was like, who's jealous of you? Gawain or Gallon? Are they jealous of you? Like who? We're going to have somebody, I think that may come back.
I think it's also just fair to assume that because she is in such a highly enviable position.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
I also think it's fair to assume that she's in such a highly enviable position and her older brother has been parentified over her since the age of 2.
Yeah, that's true.
And also her other brother has been made to feel like the third wheel his entire life. There might be, I think, maybe not enacted upon jealousy, but I think it's totally reasonable to be like, hey, the Tracans are straight out of a Jerry Springer episode.
I just want Tracan family drama. Tracan Damadrug family drama.
Oh, we're absolutely getting
That's all I've
that.
ever wanted.
We are 100% getting that. And I thought that line might be alluding to some of that. Moraine threatening to pass Lan's bond to Alana by force.
It's from the book. It's just a different person.
And that's all I got. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, man, we got to talk about a bunch of shit. We got to talk about Eludrin. We got to talk about how they're exploring why I said I don't have children.
I have a theory about Eludrin.
Hit me. Go.
And I've been kind of like sitting on it. I think that it's possible that Eludrin might have a daughter or granddaughter named Eludra.
That's very possible.
I mean, it could also be just like a common name in, where are they from? Terabon?
Terabon.
Pretty sure they're from Terabon. I think that, because a lot of people are like, oh, does that mean that we're getting no Eludra? I think that we absolutely will have Eludra. I think that if we do have her, and I do think we will, they might be setting up for her to have a little bit more to do with other people's emotional journeys.
Sure.
Because like the difference between us keeping a character and not keeping a character, one is going to be like, how much do the fans like them?
That is part of it.
That is always going to be a factor. And Eludra
part of why we got Bail Domon.
If the Grinwell Cup is any indication, Eludra is shockingly popular. Explosively popular, you might say.
Huh.
She's cool. She provides something different than the other women do. I think that she has great opportunities to do fun things with Matt. So I think we're going to get her, but in order to justify her existence, we're going to need her to link to maybe more than just one plot. I think Leandrin is likely here to stay and will be Alviar and Leandrin combined, potentially. So we're going to need to have increasingly more to do with her. I think it's possible that Aludra is named after Aludrin and is his granddaughter.
Very possible. I mean, if we ever hear his name, it's only been in the X-ray so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like that theory. And I also just
and
really...
it works. They're both from Terabon.
I really like that they are humanizing dark friends. I think it ties in really well with the theme, what they talked about with monsters.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically just they've taken Ingtar and expanded it out, I think. Although I don't think Leandrin is going to be changing her mind about anything.
But I do think it's also getting at Robert Jordan's thesis as well.
Absolutely. It's balance.
There is no such thing as being too far gone that you can't come back and make amends. That sometimes there's hot nuance in the world about what is good and what is evil. And sometimes understanding what that nuance is requires us being in someone's head and seeing how it goes. And we're just taking that inner work and externalizing it more. So we have Leandrin having a son when we know she's Black Aja, but sometimes people's reasons for doing really bad things doesn't necessarily come from them being bad people.
That's what Ingtar said.
Yeah. And that's Ingtar's whole reason for being.
Shtick.
And I think we're going to get a lot more of that. And Dana also last season was similar. She was like, I have seen just awful shit and I want it all to stop. That's why I'm doing this, because I keep seeing awful shit and maybe the world doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah, I really like what the show is doing with its characters. I like what it's exploring. I like the themes. I like everything that I'm seeing, by and large. This is a good episode. I'm excited to talk about episode 3, and I do have some spoilery stuff to talk about as well. So, anything else on this front, Allie?
No, I think so. Next episode, we get, of course, the story turn stuff, I think. So obviously, I mean, I'm not going to get into what we've seen about episode 3 because obviously we'll watch them all immediately. But story turn episode, obviously that's going to be increased information about things that propel us toward the midpoint. I think the Sean Chan will play a big role.
We'll talk more about that.
We'll talk more about that next episode.
But for now, Allie, you got to leave because I got to talk about some spoilery stuff that I'm going to record at a later date with another person.
All right. Bye, everyone.
An unidentified full series spoiler has been detected. If you have not read the entire Wheel of Time series, this is your signal to disengage.
Welcome to the part that has everything spoilable. All the spoil. If it could be considered a spoiler for any Wheel of Time, it's in here. If you haven't finished the books, fuck off, respectfully. You're very wonderful people who are working your way through, but this is a bad place for you to be. No esteemed dead are honored here, etc., etc. Hi, for everybody who's still here, we're here to talk about full series spoiler things. And by we, I don't mean me and Allie, because that would be bad, because Allie, again, has not finished the books. I am here today with the one and only, the incredible Bree, who is half of Kit Rocha, who you might know as the author of such phenomenal series as the Beyond series, the Mercenary Librarians series, and the forthcoming novel, Consort of Fire, which releases in just a couple of weeks, which I have read, and which I really, really, really liked, and which you should check out too. Bree, how you doing?
I am doing pretty good. That was a lovely introduction. You introduced me so much better than I introduced me. So I'm just going to bring you around and have you introduce me everywhere.
I would be happy to MC for you, whatever you need. If you need a hype man, I'll be your hype man.
Excellent. So yeah,
great.
Let's spoil some shit.
Let's spoil some shit. It is so good to have you here. As you may have gleaned from the introduction I just did mentioning that Consort of Fire releases in a couple of weeks on November 28th, yeah, this is being recorded extremely much later than the rest of the episode because life got in the way. And now is the first time that Bree and I have really properly had to sit down and discuss spoilers. We are going to, again, keep this to within the scope of episode 2 for the people who are watching along and listening to the episodes as they watch the show. So if there are things that happen later in the episode, in the series, the TV series that are divergent from the books or that might be considered a spoiler, we are going to shy away from those for the time being. Bree's going to be back for later episodes to discuss more stuff.
Yay!
I continue to do intro things, and I will stop now. I'm just very excited to have you here.
Well, thank you. I love being part of these fabulous episodes. It was really funny, though, because I was watching and I was thinking about how last season there was so much in every episode that Allie hadn't gotten to yet. You guys have made some progress because this episode, my notes are pretty slim. A lot of it you guys can finally talk about, which must be like really a relief for you.
It's a load off to not have to parse, okay, wait, well, this is a foreshadowing moment for nothing.
Nope.
For just something that you don't worry about it. It's refreshing to say the least.
And I will tell folks, Allie watched a lot of these because you had the benefit of screeners this time around.
Yes, we did. Yes.
And so Allie had watched most of the episodes when they dropped. So she watched them over Zoom with me. And I had a few harrowing moments there. Mostly Varen and Sheriam related. I'll say right now.
That's what most of my notes are for this episode, honestly, are about those two. But I have a hard enough time keeping a straight face with Allie, knowing exactly what she's read. Oh boy, I do not envy you.
So
having to do that as well.
It was definitely, and there are times she was watching me. I could tell she was watching me, and I was.
She always does that.
No, I'm not going to reveal anything. I don't know what's happening.
She does that when we're recording book episode or show. She just stares at me sometimes when I'm reading a passage or when I'm picking what sections to read aloud or what things to talk about. She just stares directly at me over the microphone to see if I break in any way. It's harrowing.
It's seriously.
I love her. It's more than anything in the world. But it's funny because she also actively doesn't want to find out things, but she does like to see if she can't glean stuff. It's nuts.
Detective Allie on the case.
That's the one. Yes. It's a full-time job for her.
So, yeah. Do you want to go in order? Because, I actually took some notes in order, but I only have, a couple things that aren't just Varen.
Yeah, go ahead. I didn't take a ton of notes. I wrote Sheriam, Varen, everything.
Yeah.
So.
Well, one thing I did notice, because we started with the dream sequence, and they are just not missing a chance to gouge Matt's eyes out here, are they?
No, they are leaning heavily into that.
I feel like this is not the first time that's happened in a dream sequence.
No, I don't think so. What was going on with season 1 Matt? Because season 1 Matt showed up in dreams a couple of times. He had blood on his hands.
He did have blood on his hands. He had the red hands.
Right.
But
okay.
I don't know. I think there was something with an eye, and I think there's something later in the season maybe. So they're not shying away from the foreshadowing at all.
Yeah, it's nice to see how many, and again, we're not going to talk specifics for later episodes, but there are a lot of winks, no pun intended, and nods to moments that are coming forward. It's very in keeping with how Robert Jordan wrote these books, like all the times where Rand says, "Oh, I'd cut off my hand this, my hand that." Yeah, and yeah.
And so, I feel like Allie has been convinced she knows about the eye thing for a while now.
For a long time. I think she puzzled that out in book 5 or 6 when she was thinking about give up half the light of the world to save the world.
Yeah.
It might have been later. That one took her a while, which is fair because it's not exactly, I wouldn't intuit that.
No, I don't think it's the most obvious, but I do think, it's now, the show has to have convinced her she's right? Because
she's pretty sure because she did pause several times and say, "Is that his eye missing?" And I went, "I don't know. I wouldn't worry about it."
Don't think about it. It doesn't look like anything to me.
Just to be vague, there are other dream sequences later this series that also have Matt with his eye missing.
Yeah.
So, pretty exciting. And of course, hanging from things in dreams. And I'm not going to talk about it too much more than that because we'll get there when we get there.
Yes, we will. So yes, it's time for the Varen of it all.
That's the biggest. My God. They introduced her, not introduced, but, the biggest chunk of exposition they had for her to bring her into the plot. She says, even oaths have loopholes that can be exploited. Oh, come on.
Just beautiful. Did you notice, like, when they first introduce her, it's with the two books stacked on top of each other, like, in the table in this episode?
You showed me. You pointed that out.
The big book and the little book, with the one that has the thing that wraps around it. And I don't know, you got one of those big swag boxes, right?
Yeah.
They sent out?
The journals.
Yeah. I feel like that journal with the little thing that wraps around it and tucks in, they gave a bunch of people. It does
look, I'm holding this in my hand. Amazon Prime sent out, apropos of nothing, and just because, I don't know, they sent out these little collectible boxes of swag that had like robes and hats and pins and these journals. And the journal is a leather-bound journal. It's stamped with sort of like a gold foil Wheel of Time logo. And it's got a leather cord that wraps twice around the journal and then tucks into itself in a leather strap with a key on it. Mm-hmm. There's no keyhole on the journal, but there you go. And the pages inside are like very weathered, old-looking colored paper.
Yeah,
in the colors
it looks like handmade paper. I used to make handmade paper.
Really?
Well, my mother was an artist and ran an art school, so I've done everything.
Sure.
But yeah, making paper was one of my favorites, actually, and it really looks like that, and in the different colors of the ajas, too, so it's like sort of cool.
It's wildly impractical. You could not hardly use this for anything, because the paper is colored, but it's a beautiful art piece, and it's a really lovely thing to come out of the, mass production juggernaut that is Amazon.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a little bit of that. That's kind of what I felt like. It was a Varen nod in there to the fans.
I'd buy that. Yeah, I would certainly go in for that. It looks right, and the cord, especially because I haven't read Gathering Storm in a minute. But there is specifically a cord that wraps around that journal, isn't
it's
there?
Like one of those placeholders that like you put the ribbon through and then you'd like wrap it around. And when you hook the ends together, it makes them disappear. I went and looked it up today because I was like, isn't that so? Like, I don't think like the two books weren't the same colors as were described, and they may not be, but I think it was a nod anyway. I think somebody was saying, we know that Varen carries these very important books around all the time.
Yeah, they like to do the little nods, the little hints. It's like Allie's been latching onto this box that's on Swan's desk. Mm-hmm. Because when the tower coup happens in the books, there is a box full of secrets that she has that Elida goes to open that ignites and it burns away in a flash. And there is a somewhat conspicuous inbox looking thing on Swan's desk. It hasn't gotten much attention apart from just being there. But it definitely, the little details like that are the things that make me appreciate the attention to detail, not just from the writing team and the acting team, but also the production team. Is given a lot of the other thing she's talked about is how Adelius's costumes all have little red flowers on them because Adelius in the books is killed by Crimson Thorn. Well, she's poisoned with Crimson Thorn and then killed with the power, but
I think that is and if you like costume stuff, I know that my friend Pez, who is a costume person, she is getting her notes together to start doing. She also, because of the strike, was not doing any content, but she is getting her notes together, and I'm pretty sure that the costume content is crazy this season.
Excellent.
Just from the things she has said. So yeah, the Crimson Thorn route was definitely like such a huge thing this season. In this episode, it's really interesting to me. how heavily they're going in on that. It makes me want to go back and see if there's like other places in the books that I've like forgotten that was a thing.
I don't have a keyboard in front of me right now, but I don't remember it coming up super significantly outside of book the Adelius Van Dien stuff. Sorry, did I say Adelius? Adelius is right. I get them confused sometimes.
Yeah.
By the way, let's take a quick second to touch on Allie's whole I love this theory. I love that she's going down this road. And if she were right, it would be amazing. But because she's not right, it does feel a little bit Charlie Kelly, Pepe Sylvia, where she goes, and again, the only reason that I say that is because ultimately she is incorrect. Robert Jordan has followed more inane threads before. But where she digs into, well, if the show has replaced Van Dien with Varen, then Van Dien and Varen must share an allegiance, which means that Varen and Van Dien must both be dark friends or must both not be dark friends, because if anything else were the case, there would be widespread panic and meltdown on Twitter, because it would imply a change to da-da-da. And yes, that's a great point. If anybody gave a shit about Van Dien.
If anybody who is not following Wheel Takes remembers who the literal only reason I knew who Adelaus was is because of her weird murder theory. That was just a subplot that just, because it goes nowhere that I care about.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even remember. I know that I've asked you like several times who actually killed her. And every time,
Cariana.
Yeah, you give me a name, and I'm like, "Who the fuck is Cariana?"
Cariana. I looked her up in Encyclopedia WoT just to get a better through line. The first thing she does of note is takes her hood off when they're at the farm with the kin, and then she is just there. And then she kills Adelius, and then she is just there, and then she is revealed and killed. That's it.
Yeah. None of that. None of it really emotionally resonated for some odd reason. Just because, you know. So yeah, like the only reason I know who she was. So the fact that the show combined them is sort of fascinating to me. Because I guess they do show up in The Great Hunt.
Briefly, yeah. And that's really, we've kind of touched in our analysis that it seems as though Moiraine and Lan's early plot of this whole season is really drawn just from that scene.
Yeah.
And it's sort of an expansion of and a deepening of and a what-ifing of that one moment, which is really the only major moment that Moiraine has in Book 2, in Adelius and Van Dien's cabin.
Yeah, which, by the way, people have been like, so Moiraine would never, or like, what the fuck, Moraine's being so mean. I'm like, guys, have you read that scene lately? She's very mean. Tortures Lan. She's just like, I could send you to whoever I want, like a fucking UPS package. So
yeah,
does it chafe?
It's very dehumanizing.
Does it chafe Lan? And I'm like, wow.
She talks about like the wearing the bridle or whatever.
Yeah,
I feel like there's some horse imagery where she's like, you know,
it's intense, and it's meaner, and it's literally textually kind of jealousy too.
Yeah.
Whereas,
that Night Even stuff?
Yeah, like she's textually jealous because she's feeling threatened that Lan taught Rand the stuff to meet Swan. Mm-hmm. And so she's like textually testing if he has given his allegiance too much to Nynaeve and her people instead of her. Whereas in this show, it feels like a legitimate trauma response of her thinking she has no power left and she's now on a suicide run and she's just got to get him out of the blast radius before she takes him down with her.
Yeah.
Which feels way more like sympathetic to me than what she does in the books, but people were just mad.
What's funny because, you know, obviously everybody's interpretation is going to be colored by how they read it the first time and what characters they're drawn to. And there's, you know, there are very few wrong interpretations that aren't racist, but, or sexist. I just have to say that.
No.
But it's interesting because I agree with you that Moiraine is coming from a place of kindness a lot more in the show than she does in the books, which is funny because I see people arguing the exact opposite. Yeah. As you say.
Well, I feel like they didn't, and I don't know if this is a romance thing, like, you know, when she's, you know, she told him that, no, we were never equal. And like the timeline like blows up with outrage, except for like the romance part of my timeline, which was, yeah, you dummy, you were always better to her.
Better
like,
than me.
Everybody knows that move. Every freaking romance hero in the world has pulled it.
Yep.
It is the pushing you away for your own good move.
It's funny because I've seen both she would never say something that cruel and it's so obvious that this is where she's going with it. To which I would say, to tie back to romance a little bit, every romance novel you read, you know these two people are going to end up together eventually. The point isn't being surprised.
Yeah.
The point is, how are we going to get there?
Yeah. So I feel like she was pulling a little bit of stuff that we usually... Like, listen, Lan literally tells Rand, go tell 90 of them off fucking some green sisters. Make it hurt.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he decides to do. That's Lan's idea of, like, how you push someone away. So I feel like we're used to watching men do that in these books. And I mean, the men are constantly like trying to yeet the women out of their lives because,
at all times,
you know, for their own good. So let Moraine have her moment, y'all.
It is nice to see everybody equal opportunity. What's the word for it? Pedestaling.
Protect over like it's chivalry. It's misplaced chivalry.
Yeah.
And, you know, let them all do it.
Well, it's like we talk about the benevolent misogyny.
Yes.
Sometimes when we're breaking down, when we talk about Rand's list, especially, it's a benevolent, well-meaning misogyny. It's still misogyny, but it's presented in a way.
Benevolent chauvinism. Because I feel
works. Yeah,
like
that's good.
it's not quite a hatred, but it is a superiority.
Benevolent chauvinism is better.
That's what I feel like that is. And so like
where it's sorry, go ahead.
No. Just, you know, it's not it's protective and it comes from maybe an okay place, but that doesn't make it not terrible and abusive and belittling.
Yeah, it's well intentioned and it's presented in a way that's intended to be, but this is like, but when you really dig into it, you go, yeah, but it's still a problem.
Yeah, and so when we do it to competent people with presumed competence like Lan, we get more mad at the person doing it to them because we assume that Lan can handle whatever's coming for him, right? So, which we don't assume for the women who are being pushed away.
Even the ones who can make magic nukes with their fingers.
Yes. So,
which is most of them.
Yeah, they're all pretty, so. Boomy.
I guess I know we've kind of strayed from Varen, but whatever. When we're in the books right now, or when we're reading book 8 and we're talking about Rand being like, Min, maybe you shouldn't come out of the room while we're having a magic battle. That I get.
Yeah,
that I get. But when
there's a lot going on there with poor Min.
Yes.
I mean, and we get to meet Min in this episode.
Yes.
And so different. Well, not meet her, I guess meet her again because she has disappeared from last season and pops back up. And
it's good to have her back.
It is definitely. And I don't know what sort of journey she's on. There's a lot of people who I feel like it's interesting journeys. Another one is just because we got Logain and Rand actually meeting in this episode. And I have been thinking so much about like the long range trajectory of that. Like just, if Rand actually knows Logain and has like had discussions with him, does putting Taim and Taj at the tower seem like I'm really interested to see where all of this ends up going.
Absolutely.
Because them having met is a big shift in the power dynamics and what we're going to lead up to them, how we're going to get to a place where Logain is basically, taking over as his heir, more or less.
Yeah, because we do need to lead up to that, right?
Yeah.
And in the books, it is very much I was in the right place at the right time for Logain. Because I'm trying to think, he and Rand meet and speak in CROSSROADS or Knife of Dreams.
It's
right?
late. It's late.
But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that they talk before that.
Because
that I can think of.
I mean, maybe Rand sees him on one of the trips to like the tower because Egwene basically lets him go to the tower, or like quote unquote lets him go. And so he goes to the tower, and then there's just sort of like I mean, he's there, and Rand is avoiding it for most of that.
Yeah.
So,
no, he doesn't. I don't. When he visits the tower, the Black Tower.
Yeah.
He does it. He does it when he founds it de facto, and then he does it when he gives the pins away.
Yeah.
And then he never really goes back.
Yeah,
it's
it's not much. So like, it is weird. I feel like I like the idea that their paths are like crossing more, and I do hope that they like see each other again before this all goes down. I feel like it builds a much stronger relationship between them, especially something where he is starting as the experienced one who is telling Rand what to do, but in the end is going to come in and like sort of be his successor. It's you know, interesting.
Yeah, even with the Androl of it all, which everyone is entitled to their thoughts on Androl. But even with the Androl of it all, I do feel like Logain is very, I mean, you know, in the last battle, the Black Tower protects always. All of that stuff is very clear that this is the guy.
Yeah. And I love it because, I mean, that is sort of, even though I am an Androl apologist,
I also am. I quite enjoy this man who should be 60 based on how he's described, but is apparently 30 years old.
Yeah, when I actually found out he was 30, I was like, okay, so I should not be apologizing for him. He is, in fact, a ridiculous character. I take that back. But still, you know, I don't hate him. He doesn't spank anyone, which is the first thing I always tell everyone. And I mean, honestly, he does not have a lot of competition.
Yeah,
in that
and I do enjoy his and Pavara's relationship as sort of a precursor foreshadow type thing for cooperation between the towers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of this guy that we saw in season 1, who was so convinced. Like we saw Logain in that episode 4 when he, you know, had the king of Gildan like on his knees, and he was so convinced that he was here to heal the world. So I want this man who is so interested in like saving the world. And then he goes into the tower and he basically like tries to get killed by Swan, and he's now in a mental institution. He's having a rough road. And so I really do, like, I'm obsessed with what they're going to do to build him up and how his life is going to continue to intertwine with Rand's on the way to his actual, the Black Tower protects, because I know that not everybody loves that thing, but I love that scene. That is my,
oh my God, me too.
Absolute, when he chooses, even after all of his trauma, to go back to be that guy who he was. We saw him be in the first episode with the voices whispering for him to do the opposite, and he decides to save people. Because I think that's what we want. We want the callback to that at the end.
Well, yeah, it's good story brings you back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? You touch base with where you started. And I think especially with the casting of Alvaro Amorte, who Money Heist in particular was such a huge show internationally, and also in the States, I think, on Netflix especially. That's a larger international get as an actor. And, you know, making the time to give him a significant role in season 2, making the time to give him a significant enough role in season 1. This guy quite clearly is being set up as a foil. You know, it's nice because I feel like Rand in particular has many foils in the show so far. He's got, of course, Ishamael is the front and foremost foil. Logain is to me a foil for him on the side of good, and so is Nynaeve, and so is Egwene.
Yeah.
Which is it's curious because I feel like there is, again, everybody views the show, as you pointed out very well once, and maybe you can elucidate or explain this a little better than I can when I'm paraphrasing you. But everybody quite literally interprets and experiences the show differently based on what they are looking for.
Okay,
right?
Like I will give my little story, Wired for Story rant. Like one of my favorite craft books is called Wired for Story, and it talks about the neuroscience of storytelling and how when we are our brains are like programmed. We learn by storytelling. We seek narrative. We're hungry to like find stories. And so what we do is when we figure out very swiftly when we're introduced to a story, what kind of story we think we're being told. And then we look for clues that, support the story that we think we're being told. And so all of us who have read the books are coming into season 2 expecting to see a very specific story, because in our heads, we already know what things are important. And they're, the things that we read in The Great Hunt or The Dragon Reborn. And so our brains are scanning like frickin' Terminator heads-up displays, looking for the clues that are going to like be relevant to the story that we have envisioned. And it means that we're likely to miss things that are telling a different story or a slightly different version of it. Whereas if you watch the non-readers when they do their like reactions, which is my favorite thing to do, they have no idea. They have no preconceived notions. So they are watching what this show gives them, and they are assuming that that is the story. And then they are like, they're so on point catching all of the little details that the show is putting in there. And I think it's also why a lot of people hate the first watch, the readers, but then they go back. And when they go back, they know the new story now. They now know what this episode's going to be about. And when they watch it a second time, their brain is looking for the right clues and the right beats and the right notes. And they're noticing different things because now they know, their brain knows what the story is. And I think that is like a huge thing that's happening, because I see it all the time with readers who go away like for a couple of weeks and then they watch the episode again. They're like, wow, it's not as bad as I thought it was. But like, well, you're experiencing it completely differently the second time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like literally your brain has just like gotten a reboot and now it's like finding different things in it.
Yeah. And that, I think, I bring this up, and I thank you for giving a much better walkthrough of that. But I bring this up because a lot of people will say there's not enough Rand. Rand's the main character. Why isn't it focusing on Rand? But so many of the major characters in this show are on paths that are parallel and complementary or antagonistic or in some way tie back to Rand's story. I think whether or not Rand gets the most screen time, which is not for me to determine because there are other people who do a much better job of breaking that down than I do, Rand very much to me feels as though he is the central character of the show. Yes, it was about all of them, but it all ties back to, it's like you've seen those graphics of the solar system moving through the galaxy, and everything is moving and spinning like crazy, but it's all spinning around the sun, which is itself moving forward. Rand's the sun. Yeah.
In this show, like, I think nothing illustrates that better than the first episode, which was, he wasn't in it, but so much of it was about him, about his loss, about his grief, about, the way that the things that impacted him as the dragon has changed everybody's lives.
Yeah.
You felt his absence. And
very hard,
and like everything with the Moraine and Land plot is about Rand.
Mm-hmm.
So like I do think it is like so much of that is central to him. And I think that they're expecting different things. I also think that Rand is not like, we know that Robert Jordan had this idea that he was going to write 6 books, and he paced these 6 books.
Yeah.
He paced books 2 and 3 like Rand was going to be halfway through his
ramp this shit up.
Hero's journey, right? And there's a hard reset, like in book 6, where everything sort of like rolls back. And so we're avoiding that by sloping Rand up at a much more reasonable pace and also making him a lot more likable.
I agree with that. My first read of the books, I respectfully to Rand, I was fucking sick of this guy by the time I got to book 8. I went on Reddit and I was like, thank God Katsuane's going to smack some sense into him, and Reddit tore me a new fucking asshole. But, I was just like, I have no time for this man. And admittedly, this is because I was reading the books quickly, and now that I read the books again, more slowly, I am reading. And because again, wired for story, I know where we're going. I'm seeing a lot more of his pain. I'm seeing a lot more of his, what makes his journey sympathetic. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, the first time I was like, just shut up, kid. I know you're having a hard time, and I'm sympathetic to you for that, but so are a lot of other people in this series, and they're handling it a lot better than you are.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not a knock on the way the character is written. The character is written very well. I love the books, etc., etc. And looking at it now, yes, I see where he's going with it. But I do think by spending more time showing us soft baby Rand, who disappears by book 3. Mm-hmm. I think the moment soft baby Rand got the nail in the coffin in the books is after Rand causes the earthquake in the hills.
Yeah.
In book 3, when the Trollocs show up, and then there's that. It's the cover of the ebook, and it's the cover of the trade paperback. It's Rand sitting on the stump with the dragon banner behind him, draped over one leg, and the flute in his hand on the other leg, and he wanted to sit for a moment and remember a shepherd called Rand al'Thor.
Yeah.
Is that. And I think in the show, we're not going to be remembering a shepherd named Rand al'Thor, and I think Demise Wells and the box is the coffin.
Yeah, I think that
for that.
I think that he's going to hold on to his humanity a lot longer. He's going to struggle to do so. Because he's definitely, they're going to give us a nice pace. I think Demise Wells is going to happen later than a lot of other people seem to think, because we
discussed that.
That is a dark turn.
It is.
And that is when you start to move towards your absolute bleak moment, your point of no return, because it is, there's only so long you can keep people in the grim and hopeless state of mind that he transitions into after that. And I mean, I think we saw that in Game of Thrones. People were starting to get extremely, like, there was that one season, like 6 or something, where everyone was like, could you just stop torturing everybody? Like, it's too depressing. There's no wins. There's nothing that feels good about any of this. So I definitely think that's, we need to delay that and not let it linger, because it also, I think it blunts the pain. I think that if you bathe in it too much, it's just, it doesn't feel as horrible anymore. You get numb to it.
Yeah. Well, as you know, and I'm just one data point, but I was numb to it in book, I was numb to it in book 8.
Yeah.
And then it came back, I gave it more time. I thought about it, and it got a little teary for the boy.
So,
but
I love him in the show. I legitimately do. That Errol scene, like, this episode 2 was when I went, oh, you guys are just going to kill me, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Well, people like to joke and laugh about, not joking. People like, so what's your favorite character? Who's your favorite new? Yada yada yada. And I go, kind of Errol.
Yeah,
more than a little bit. I'm kind of a preview, I guess, for our episode 3 discussion, which we have already recorded most of. But we talk a lot about Rand's search for a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And Errol is brought up as sort of the embodiment of that soft-heartedness.
Yeah.
That sweetness. And I just love the dude. And I love watching Rand with him, because that's... Season 1 is Rand as caretaker.
Yes.
Right? And season 2 as well.
Protectiveness. In such a nod, they got to show how protective he is without it having to be him taking agency away from women. They like the way that this, that other orderly was like fucking with Errol, and they got to show this like protector streak of him. And like more of that, more, please.
Absolutely.
So, okay, I only have one more thing. Shariam.
Is she
a dark friend in the show? I don't know.
Think so.
Maybe?
I think so, because of all the... She's had moments and looks with everybody, but her sort of neutered conversing and discussion and coverage of, well, we want Nynaeve to be around later, right? We want that. Let's make sure she's there at the last battle. Wink, wink.
Yeah, that dead face look. I was like...
Yes.
I loved how they played it, because it could be she was just like irritated as fuck that Alana had her fuckboys in there with her.
Yeah.
Or there could be something weird about it. And I feel they have captured the Great Hunt confusion with Shariam. I know nothing about, I don't know what to trust her or not.
I enjoy that. I think, because obviously we can't talk full spoilers quite yet, But we have discussed how Sheriam, for Allie especially in her book discussion, has been such a question mark and remains a question mark. She's now confident that she is a dark friend based on the torturing in book 8. But kind of the functionality of that and how truly of a dark friend. For people who don't know, Allie has assigned Sheriam Varen's plot in the books.
Yes.
I'm curious to see what they do in the show, because Sheriam for me in the books was one of the more, she's just evil, okay, reveals of it all.
She was so suspicious early on, and then it just sort of fades off, and then there's like the whole thing where she's working with Egwene, and so you sort of like forget, because she doesn't seem to be working against Egwene.
Yeah.
In the little tower and everything. And so I had sort of like just sort of pieced out on the whole thing when it popped up. And then I was like, oh shit. Well, and I always think that Sheriam is the one who is the most, I just joined for the rental car discounts.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was going to have to do apocalypses.
Yeah. Homeowners Association.
Yeah.
With light arson.
So it'll be interesting. Okay, by the way, before we started recording, Allie just like came in here and like casually, while looking at both of us, said maybe Varen is the triple agent. Is she doing that a lot?
She does that all the fucking time. And it's great. It's genuinely wonderful, because she's just so the show has made her so curious again about things that she had thought were settled. Sometimes in ways where she is questioning decisions that were right, and sometimes in ways that she is questioning decisions that were wrong. And it's just so lovely there is a motorcycle outside. It is just so lovely for her, for me to watch her re-emerge on these journeys.
Well, the show is definitely giving her ample ammunition, so we will get to talk about it when we get to whatever episode Leandrin and Varen were. Woo!
Yes, much more to discuss down the line.
Yes, I'm very excited.
But for now, I feel it's funny. We said we were only going to talk about Varen. We talked about Varen for maybe 5 minutes, but I'm glad that we covered all of this. The Varen thing is mostly just this. So, I'm thrilled. I'm having a great time.
Me too.
Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap up for today?
We didn't say anything about Celine, but mostly I figure you guys have covered all the good stuff, because like there's not really a lot of endgame.
Yeah.
But wow, she sure came into this episode.
The only thing that I could possibly consider endgame is, and it doesn't really even count because it's that thing that Sanderson revealed like a year ago.
Yeah.
Where she doesn't actually die at the last battle, which I just pretend didn't happen because I personally don't like that. But where they're in bed and he goes, "I don't want to hurt you," and she goes, "You couldn't hurt me." And obviously that's small scope, but you could also read a little bit of no, because like I'll do whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. I'll be fine.
Well, though, "You couldn't hurt me" is actually interesting foreshadowing now that you bring that up. Because you know what Perrin says when he snaps her neck is, "I'm here to do the things you can't."
Mm-hmm.
So
that's great. That's a good point.
That is, I remember that line very clearly because I don't love it. That whole thing wasn't my favorite because,
the reveal, quote unquote.
The reveal aside from itself, but just the whole Robert Jordan making me wish for violence against women. Like, I don't want violence against women, but I also don't want us not murdering Forsaken.
Yes.
But
it's such an interesting tightrope he's put us on.
But yeah, I had completely forgotten until you said "you can't hurt me." That is exactly what Perrin says. "I'm here to do things you can't," and then he snaps her neck.
Yes. Or apparently does not. Or
does not. We don't know.
Yes.
I'm going with
none
he
of
did.
my business. I'm happy for Brandon that he put in his mystery box Easter egg treasure hunt. I think that's cool. I will continue to pretend that is not what happened, and I understand that I'm wrong, but that's all right. I will happily be wrong in the corner.
I think that he could have put it on the page a little more explicitly if he really wanted that to be the thing.
I would agree with
so
that.
I'm going to say, thank you, no.
Yeah.
Well, no, I will say she can live on for Matt Hatch, but that's just it.
Yes.
So, I mean, now that I've met her wardrobe, I'm a little more sympathetic. So
It's pretty fantastic costuming.
Gotta love. Well, we've only met Celine's wardrobe so far, so I guess we'll come on to later episodes.
we're gonna have to keep watching, everybody. Well, Bree, thanks for taking some time out of your day to come and chat. I will be in touch about further later episodes. This may not be an every week sort of thing because, again, Allie's nearly through the books. Well, not nearly. Actually, you know what's nuts? We're currently, as of this recording, on Knife of Dreams Chapter 4. And in the full series ebook, it says 66% completed.
Oh,
as of Knife of Dreams 4.
Those final books are big ones.
They're chonky.
And the craziest stuff. I can't wait, though. I cannot wait for her to read The Gathering Storm. I know. All that Egwene payoff.
I mean, the last 3 books are just like payoff candy.
Yeah.
Just nonstop payoff candy, which can be very refreshing after not having a lot of payoff for a while.
Very much so. Well, thank you so much for inviting me and letting me rant. I do
anytime.
love to.
It is always a joy to have you here. As a reminder again to everybody, Consort of Fire releases on what date?
November 28th.
And they can get it where?
Online bookstores, Amazon, your favorite ebook or audiobook place. The narrators are pretty amazing. So if you like a sexy book, get some sexy narrators.
This is the oft discussed horny dragon book. If I didn't make that clear. This is the very horny book with a very horny dragon. Having read it, both of those statements are very much true.
Very true.
So, well, Bree, thanks, and we're gonna fade it out here and bring in the outro. So have a happy rest of your day.
Whee!
Bye bye.
Want me to do my harp noise? I do harp noises now.
Oh,
my harp noise
absolutely. Oh my god, that's amazing. Flawless.
That's my harp noise. So I don't know how he does it. I'm a burbling fish, apparently, so.
It's good. It's like a fountain.
Yeah.
All right, and we're back, and we're just here to say thanks for listening. Allie's back.
Hello.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We have social media. If you want to know what we've got going on, it's linked below. We also have a Patreon if you want to support us that way. It's patreon.com/wheeltakes. And you can always leave us a rating and a review, which helps a lot.
A ton.
Other than that, anything else, Sally?
That was a lot of people named Sean Chan. Am I right?
It was. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you again for listening. This was Wheel Takes with Allie and Gus. Music by Alexander Nakarada.